What's up, everybody? Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert. I am joined today by secular spirit Aleem. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Welcome to MythVision for your first time, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been long overdue.
Absolutely. I've checked you out. You and Aladdin have actually Apostate Aladdin, for those who don't know. Here you are together. I did a stream I caught a while back. I dropped a comment on. I can't remember what it was related to. I think it was related to Apostate Prophet or something. And I was just like, yeah, there you. I kind of, the writing was on the wall for quite some time that was heading that way. And I'm not going to sit here and knock someone's personal journey or whatever.
Yeah.
We're all going through a tough time in this world, but I hope people will go subscribe to you. We want to talk to Muslims, but I never got to talk to you. And so usually I don't do this. Usually it's like Aleem's show, talking about your life, your story, and then down the road, we know who you are, and then we get call-ins. But today we decided we'd do something different. But I think it's only fair we first address the very title. Why do you think we left? Well, we're going to tell you why, but then we're going to see if you actually, can engage that and understand some of the reasoning or empathize with the reasoning there and have Muslims call in. I'd be interested to hear some of them. We had a lot of success the last time we had Apostate Aladdin on.
I saw. Yeah, it was great.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really cool. So I'm hoping that we can continue this trend and make it like this actually turn into really important conversations going on between people on both sides of the fence. I don't think there's really a fence there. I think it's in our heads, but anyway. Aleem, welcome. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your channel real quick, and then tell us about yourself.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm a former Muslim. I left Islam when I was 18. I'm 36 years old now. So, almost half my life ago, almost exactly half my life ago. And the reason I created this channel was because leaving Islam was a big experience, a big milestone in my life. And there was a lot of harm that happened to me from being Muslim. And what I wanted to do is join the conversation on social media, talking about those harms of Islam, but doing it in a way in which talking from my lived experience. So this isn't criticism coming from Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins, who you could argue in some ways correctly that they don't understand Islam very well. It would be coming from me, someone who lived Islam for half my life and who cares about Muslims, Muslims who used to be just like me, the Muslims that are still believers in my family. And the goal was to help them understand why I felt that there was harm in my life from Islam and how I believe that Islam harms them too. And in the end, let them just ask the questions that I'm asking, ask those questions in themselves, like go through those questions and find the answers that make most sense to them. And then we can take it from there as a conversation, because in the end, I don't want people to be forced to leave Islam. I want people to realize, from their own volition, from their own critical thinking, that Islam is not the best thing for them and it's not the best thing for the people around them. So that's why I started this channel, because I don't want to attack Muslims. I don't want to rage bait Muslims. I want to engage with Muslims and be very honest about the reasons why I left and why I hope they leave too.
Wow. Yeah, I'm with you. I can dig it. It's tough. It's tough. And you know what it's like to be in the believer's seat and now not being in the believer's seat, or being in the non-believer seat. So maybe we get a little bit of biography from you. I'd like to know your family, your upbringing, your social security number. Totally kidding. But yeah, if you don't mind, tell us who Aleem is. What kind of Muslim were you? There's various kinds of Muslims, and how devout were you, your family, and take us into your kind of deconversion. I guess we'll truncate it within 30 minutes if so, and then we can take callers if that's cool.
For sure. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I mean, the best place to start is to say that I grew up in a pretty typical Muslim family, a Sunni Muslim family. Where my story is a little bit unusual or different is I'm Palestinian. My parents on my father's side was a Palestinian refugee. My mother's father, so my grandfather, was a Palestinian refugee. So because of that, we kind of grew up all over the place, like moved around a lot, which is typical for a lot of Palestinian refugees. I was born in the United Arab Emirates, so in the Gulf region of the Middle East, but I also lived in the United Kingdom. I lived in Canada. And during that time period, and I'm talking about, 4 or 5 years old, I was taught a very simple version of Islam, I would say. And it's the kind of version that you'd probably be very familiar with, just being an ex-Christian. There's a God who created you. He has a plan for you. He loves you. He loves you and all of your loved ones. He wants what's best for you. And if you do what he says, you'll get good things. And then when you die, you go to heaven and you'll be reunited with your parents, your loved ones. And that's a good thing. So that was the basic, very truncated version that I grew up in. So I believe that there was a God who cared about me and was watching me all the time and, looking out for me. So
Right.
Angels looking out for you as well. I believed in all of that. So where things kind of became a bit more complex is when I think I was around 8 years old, and we were living in the United Kingdom at that point, and my parents decided to go back to the United Arab Emirates, to Dubai, where I was born. So the reason for that was because they just couldn't get good jobs. They couldn't get permanent residence in the United Kingdom. And so we went back to the Middle East. And I was enrolled in a school there. And the thing that's a little bit different about schools in those kinds of countries in the Middle East is that religious education is ingrained as part of the just regular government imposed curriculum. So the same kind of way you'd have maybe, math, science, English, Arabic, whatever. We would have a class 4 times a week. It was called Islamic education. And that's where I really learned Islam for the first time. And so this would be when I was around 8, 9 years old. And this is where my beliefs kind of became a bit more fleshed out. I learned about, okay, you've got paradise where all the Muslims, the good Muslims, go to. But there's another place.
Mm-hmm.
And this place is, I guess you could just call it hell. It's the same kind of concept as the Christian version of hell, really. And you go there if you don't believe in God, if you disobey him, if you sin too much. I was always unclear about that. And I think looking back in retrospect, I wondered how much of that was intentional, of not knowing how much bad things you needed to do in order to qualify for hell. I heard different versions growing up. So one version that I was told was at the end of time, Judgment Day, all the souls are being judged, and you are given a book of your deeds. So if you're given this book in your left hand, you're screwed. You're going to hell. That means you had more bad deeds, worse deeds than your good deeds. But if you got your book in the right hand, then you're golden. You're going to paradise. You're going to be there with all of your loved ones. And so I believed all those things. And there is a long list of things that are considered sins in Islam. So there
I
was
was
some.
going to ask you real quick before you get into
go
the sins. Did you ever have any sleepless nights worrying about not believing in the correct version of Christianity?
No, I did not.
Isn't that interesting? Because I didn't bat an eye at Allah and Muhammad. Never once did I have a night where I went, I'm kind of wondering about this Islam thing. And if it's true, I might go in that hell, not in the one that my hell is.
The way it kind of worked in the way that I was raised was that Christians were like, you guys were okay, but you just were so wrong and so off and so lost on some of the key things. But like you're kind of on the same page. So we'll let a few things slide, but you're still, I think the main thing that I was taught was, oh, you guys are blasphemers, is that you consider Jesus to be the Son of God, which is completely against Islam's teachings. To the point where Muslims, I would say the vast majority of Muslims don't even believe that Jesus was crucified. The story goes that he did go up on the cross, but before he was tortured and all that stuff, he was sent up to heaven, and a common thief replaced him. So that's what we believe, that Christians were close to being okay, but not quite there. To the point, though, actually, this is kind of jumping a little bit to the future, but you remind me of this story where, just thinking about the indoctrination of Islam and how it works. Years and years later, after I left Islam, I was talking to my mother, and we were just talking about the past. And my mother told me, this one time we recommended that you read this book when you were like 12 years old. And this book was by a famous Palestinian politician. Her name's Hanan Ashrawi, who happened to be a Christian. Me at 12 years old, I took a look at the book, read the back of it, saw that she was Christian, and I was like, no, thank you. Not interested.
I know what you mean. I would have done the same for if it was a Muslim trying to tell me something or whatever, you know what I mean, at the time.
Yeah, I was just completely dismissive of it. And my mother was stunned for reasons that I'm going to get into a little bit later in the story, little teaser for later on.
Sorry, I cut you off on sins.
No.
You were talking about sins.
Sins. So that's the other thing that I was taught in school. So again, this is the context of I'm in a class. I'm like 12. I'm even younger at that point. I'm like 10, 11 years old. And I'm being told about all these horrible things that you have to avoid. So not eating pork, not drinking alcohol. And here's the big one those two things were easy to avoid, especially in a Muslim country. But the thing that was also mentioned was you should not do anything with girls, because that is so taboo. And one of the worst things you can do is having sex outside of marriage. And I thought about that, and then I looked around me, and the school that I was in was gender segregated. So I was only with boys all day, and the girls, there were girls in the school, but they were completely sectioned off. And so I began developing this, well, why? So I'm prepubescent here, so I'm not, I haven't hit puberty, but why are girls this taboo thing? And then I got a little bit older, and I started understanding why, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
And started feeling attraction for women I'd see like walking in the shopping mall or watching TV. And that's when I started feeling really guilty and scared, because I was having these thoughts, and in some ways I was acting on them by myself. Again, if you catch my drift.
I do. And by the way, we're brothers here, like the same
which is interesting,
I had as
isn't
a Christian. It is, because these are the exact same ethical problems I had as a Christian. Lust of the flesh, pornography, attracting, seeing visual attraction to a female, especially one that's, in a bathing suit or something. You might go, ooh, I totally understand where you're coming from as a human. It's normal. And they tell you this isn't good.
That's exactly
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only good with the one woman that you get, anyway.
That's the key point of it that you highlighted there. So you said it's normal. For me at the time, I didn't see it that way. I thought I was being a horrible person, a horrible sinner.
Well,
I was doing things that were abnormal.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
So we agree theologically, same thing. In the Christian version I was in, I'm just saying we now would look at it and go, that's normal. That's what I'm ultimately saying. Yeah.
Well, that's the key thing there, where what you're taught is normal and what's not normal is completely different when you're under this kind of religious control from a very young age. So there were so many instances where I would get caught looking at a woman, let's say again, like a shopping mall or something, or all those things that you mentioned, like pornography, etc. So I was in a Muslim country, but we still had access to those things. And especially, I'm talking about now I'm like a little bit older, a school full of boys, they're going to figure out ways to get access to get that kind of stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened because of that is I just felt this immense guilt every day, where I thought, I'm praying my 5 times a day. I'm doing so many of the good things that you're supposed to do as a Muslim, but this is the one thing that is going to send me to hell. And one of the things I feared was what you're taught as a Muslim as well, is when it's time for Judgment Day, which is, I would also say, very similar to the concept in Christianity. What I learned was that there would be this angel who would blow a trumpet. And once this trumpet was blown, everyone would die, and then the souls would be, risen to be judged. And I started developing this fear that this trumpet was going to sound, and then it would be too late, and I'd be like, oh no, I looked at that magazine the day before and I didn't do enough good deeds to atone for it. What am I going to do? And so literally to the point where I lived near an airport. Sometimes, let's say 6, 7 a.m., I would suddenly jolt awake and I'd hear like this loud screeching noise, and I'd be thinking, oh my, this is it. This is it. It's over. And then I'd realize it's just a plane. Phew, okay. I still have more time. I'm going to keep on sinning though, because that's the way it worked, right? Because the way I look at it now is it almost was presented like women, girls were presented as this very dangerous thing. And but the reason why they were so dangerous is because you just wanted them so much. You wanted to be with them so much. And so I really developed this, I would say, a toxic negative attitude where I avoided talking to girls. I didn't want to be near them. And yet I still had, I still had those, what we agree now are like natural desires that I felt like I had to express, I would say, in this very private, harmful way. Yeah.
I can relate to everything you just said.
Again, isn't that interesting? So yeah, it definitely transcends. I think it's just a lot of shame. It taught me a lot of shame about my body. And there's this one story that I hesitated to talk about it before, but I've shared multiple times, so it doesn't matter. So what happened at one point too was, how I mentioned that God is always watching me. That's what I believed. And supposedly as well, there's these 2 angels that are watching all of your actions. One of them records all your good deeds. One of them records all your bad deeds. So they're seeing me alone in my room. They know exactly what I'm up to. And I, for some reason, couldn't explain to you why, like the psychology of it, but it definitely was related to Islam and how it was being taught to me. I suddenly couldn't be naked anymore. In the sense of, if I was taking a shower or changing my clothes, I would keep a pair of underwear on, because I didn't want God to see me naked. I didn't want the angels to see me naked. And the reason I mentioned the story, I know it sounds silly, but you're talking about a 12-year-old kid here, and you truly believe that God is watching you. And when you combine that with this like sense of body shame or shame about sexuality, I think it melded into my very young mind to just be unable to comprehend, unable to accept being naked in front of God.
If I may, let's share our dirty laundry so that each of us can feel like we're not alone here. You reminded me of something I've never mentioned in all 8 years ever on my channel, of something that I've never thought about mentioning because it wasn't in my mind. It's just something I remember from an experience. When I got married and sex was okay, we would go to church, and the church would teach this idea that there's the proper way in which union with your wife is right, and God is like happy with it, participates in a sense of like being happy that you're doing it the right way and all that with the wife you've now vowed to be with for the rest of your life. And I would think, okay, God is currently actively watching me with my wife, and this is like, he's saying good job. Like, it's like he's like giving me the green light, and he's like, this is actually a good thing. This is making up for all the bad times you did bad, where you were lusting and looking at another woman or pornography or whatever. God was in the room with me during this union.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, what? You know what I mean? Like you have to really think about that and be like, what the hell? Like, because I was taught that God cared so much about what was going on in your bedroom. And for so long, I had shame like you, that when I finally did the right thing and was married and did these things as they say you're supposed to, God's like high-fiving me while I'm doing it. You know what I mean? In my mind, like, yeah, good job. You're doing it right, son. Like, what the hell? Like, that's how maybe it's because I'm so obsessive about my religion, that I was so in my own mind and the psychology that was going on there, that I thought this way through the teachings. And maybe most Christians don't. Maybe I don't know if they take the religion that serious. I don't know.
I would say, for my own experience as well, I'm not saying that all Muslim boys went through the same thing that I'm doing. I'm sharing this experience to show you, to show an example to you and everyone watching. When you teach religion and you teach things to be believed literally, like God is in the room with you at all times, always watching you, you don't know how exactly a child will internalize that information, how it will affect their behavior and how they perceive reality. In my case, it came out this way for reasons, again, as I mentioned earlier, I don't fully understand it. I can take some stabs at guessing why I was like that, but it can manifest in all sorts of different ways for children who are, still developing. They're still trying to grasp what's going on around them, right? And they're still trying to understand their own bodies.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I understand you and where you're coming from. Now, I didn't wear underwear because I was worried about God, but there were times where I was like, he's watching me.
Mhm.
And like, I'd be doing things I shouldn't be doing as a, 11, 12-year-old. And I'm like, he's watching me, like crazy. So, okay. So take us from there. Like what happened to Aleem? Like what happened?
What went wrong, some Muslims might say.
Yeah.
So we're now kind of, I'm I guess you could say high school age. I did drop the never nude phase. Anyone who's a fan of Arrested Development might get that reference. I realized, oh wait, there is a thing where people can't be naked in the shower or whatever. But anyway,
Right.
so I don't know why I stopped that, but I did eventually. And I was hitting 15, 16, and I hit what I call now, what I think my dad also called at the time, my why phase. And that's where I just kind of hit this existential crisis where I started questioning everything. And I think the main reason why was because I was finishing up high school and the plan was for me to move to Canada, where I live now, actually, for university. So thousands and thousands of kilometers away from home to be alone. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to do it. There was nothing that I really wanted to study in university. It just was the thing I had to do because I finished high school. So where are you supposed to go? And because of that, I was just questioning all these things. Like, why am I doing this? Why do I have to go? What do I want to do with my life? And I did eventually go reluctantly. And when I arrived in Canada alone, my parents said goodbye to me. They did come with me and then they sent me off. I felt alone for the first time in my life in a way that I'd never felt before. And I felt that there was nobody with me because I could have literally, so sure, God is watching me. I still believed in God. God is watching me. God is caring for me. But I felt like I could just lie in bed and do absolutely nothing and no one will notice. No one will care. The professors won't notice. They'll just give me an F, right, at my university. And I sunk into like a depression that I couldn't fully understand. Like, why am I feeling this way? And one of the things that kind of confused me about it was when you're a Muslim, you're taught all the things that you're supposed to know about why you're alive. You're alive as a gift from God. So that added to my guilt too, where I felt like I was, spitting in God's face, spitting on this gift that He's given me. And where God has a plan for you, and I couldn't see what that plan was. And the last most important part of it was that God made you for beyond making you for a reason, that you just have to trust in Him, and it's all going to work out. And I just didn't see it, and I wondered, why is this not working for me? Like, why isn't the comfort of Islam working for me? And I really delved into that, but it was because I was delving into everything. If you understand what I'm saying, I was looking into why am I even getting up to brush my teeth in the morning? Why am I taking this course? Why am I in this country? How did I end up here? What am I going to do with my life?
Right.
And that's the process that really led me to examine Islam from a new light. And I started asking this why question of, why do I believe?
So you were in a, not everyone can do this, obviously, but you were in a place where you were capable of actually sincerely questioning, not trying to just find confirmation or reaffirm the already existing thing. You really had actual real questions without starting with your solution and then looking for any evidence that proves the thing you want to be true. You started from, I really don't know if this is true, and I don't have any axe to grind in a sense. I really just want to know why. What's the truth? What's going on? And with that kind of approach, somehow in your safe area where you're not stuck in some strict, religious environment, you were capable of asking that question, what happened then? You found that it was true and remained a Muslim, right? I mean, I'm kidding.
Well, that's that's the interesting thing, and it's something that I've wondered for many years. I mean, I've been doing this channel for 5-6 years, and a question I ask myself all the time, because I wanted to guide my content and how I engage with Muslims, is why did I go down this path in this moment of crisis when I'd say it brings a lot of people closer to their faith, especially a lot of Muslims, once they leave the Muslim world and they move to the Western world, Canada, the US, wherever it happens to be, they reaffirm their background, their heritage, their faith. It gives them strength. But for me, it didn't work that way. And I can't give you a good answer. What I can tell you is, once I stopped taking everything for granted, I was a wreck. I would say I was depressed, and to the point where I was contemplating suicide. I couldn't even motivate myself to go to my classes. My parents knew some of it, but they didn't realize how dire it had become. And I didn't want to talk to anyone. I definitely wasn't talking to girls, because, that's a bad thing to do, right? And didn't really have friends. And it was just this period of isolation where all I was doing was just stuck with these thoughts of why. And then I looked at Islam. Why didn't I believe this? And I started thinking about, well, why do I believe in God? Why do I believe Islam is the truth? And it suddenly hit me. And what hit me was, wait, this is this thing that I was just told was true from as early as I can remember.
Mhm.
All of these trusted authority figures in my life, my parents, my teachers, my community, told me it was true. And then I started thinking, I've never even have I ever even really experienced this God like being real? I thought I did. I thought that there were times when I was praying and I did the prayer just exactly the way I was supposed to, that I could feel God's energy within me. I started thinking, did I really feel it? And I think part of it was I was questioning why I was there in the first place. And I realized it was connected. Why was I in Canada? Why was I studying the program that I was studying? Well, because my parents told me it was the right thing for me to do. Why was I Muslim? Well, because that's what everyone told me that I was supposed to believe. So can you see how it was a little bit connected, where I was just doing things because people were telling me to do it instead of really thinking for myself? I was just assuming these people have my best interest at heart, so obviously I should be doing it. And it really kind of faded from there, because what was the foundation of my belief? I was told it was true. And what did people tell me? Well, the Quran, the Muslim holy book, it's the perfect word of God. And look at all the things around you. You've probably heard a variation of this. Look at the trees. It really is something that is taught to Muslims from a young age. Look at the trees. Look at the majesty of the waterfalls. Look at the ocean. How could all this have come from nothing? Right. And I started thinking about that. Okay, but then how do we know it was God doing it? And I think part of it too was realizing there's all these other people I'm surrounded by. There were some Christians in my school, but they were very much a minority. But now in Canada, I was surrounded by Christians. I was surrounded by Hindus, some Buddhists, people of all kinds of faiths. And I realized that, well, these people don't believe what I'm doing. So what makes me so special that I was given this gift of having the correct and true path, and these people weren't? Just because I happen to be born Muslim, where's the fairness in that? Mm. And all of these questions started arising, and I realized I didn't really have any good answers that led me back to God.
So to sum up your lack of belief is that you had more questions, and the questions got bigger and more questions. And today you have more questions than you'll ever have answers, it seems. But that's the fun part about it. And I think that's what annoys a lot of people about, I think, skeptics and people like you and me, is that they go, well, you seem to make a case that you don't think it's true, and we can give you arguments as to why we don't think something might be true. But then they go, well, what is the truth? And it's like, well, I'm not really sure. And then, that doesn't work for them. They act like you have to know. There has to be a thing that has to be true in order for you to even live to you just don't realize it, but you do believe something that is true. And it's like, I get where they're coming from because I know what that mindset was like when I was in.
Mhm.
But today I have more questions and I'm actually comfortable with ambiguity. I'm actually like, I think it's a safe place to live is going, I'm not so sure about all these things. I'm not
Mhm.
100% sure about a lot of stuff. I'm always open to more evidence, to more data that can continue to come in. And that's been very healthy for my mental health because now I'm not high-fiving God while I'm in the bedroom, with my wife in union or, other shameful things that go on in your mind that you're taught through the doctrine. Um, anyway, so I don't want to cut you off. What else would you like to say before we end up taking
Sure.
callers? Because I'm interested to hear where this goes.
Well, I'll just kind of quickly, cap off the story because, just to build off what you just said, that question of why are we here? What is our purpose? I think what we end up realizing as skeptics and when we become atheists is that the answer is, I don't know. And we may never know. And I think, again, in retrospect, thinking about, my depression of like, why am I doing any of this? And why is Islam not giving me the comfort? Is because I sensed that there was some kind of wishful thinking, man-made element to it. Because
Mm.
doesn't it sound so perfect that there's this creator who has a plan for each and every person, that every wrong thing that happens in this world has a purpose to it. Every injustice will be met with justice from God, and everything will make sense. We'll all end up in paradise forever. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? And I started thinking, well, what if this is just something that human beings made up, and maybe they genuinely believed it, but convinced themselves it was true to make, to get comfort facing all of those horrible ambiguities. And it is scary because once I took away that belief in God, I was like, okay, there is no inherent purpose to any of this, as far as I can tell anyway. Once I die, I'm gone. Once my grandfather passed away, I'm never going to see him again. Once my parents died, I'm never going to see them again. And let's say I'm just walking down the street and a car hits me and I'm dead. There seems to be no reason to think that there was no actual reason for that beyond, the cause and effect of someone was not paying attention when I happened to be crossing, and I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very bitter pill to swallow, I think, especially if you've been a believer your whole life. But what I did was I changed my mindset. And I think this is the key thing that made me, comfortable and accepting of being an atheist is I stopped looking at it as if I had lost something. I had lost paradise. I had lost a meaning for my life. And I started seeing it as, well, I never had those things in the first place. And so instead, why don't I just live my life and try to make the most of it instead of hoping for this amazing thing that has been promised to me, but I have no good reason to believe.
Mm.
And once I had that kind of shift in perspective, that's when I kind of, really left Islam behind and, became the person I am today, where I don't act like I'm entitled to anything. I don't see a greater purpose to anything beyond the purpose that we as individuals and as, a human society give to things. I don't expect some kind of reward once I'm dead and gone. I don't expect a paradise, but that doesn't mean that life isn't worth living. And that's a tough journey for a lot of people to take. But I think it's a more meaningful and rewarding one, because then you really live life on your own terms, but also you take it upon yourself to affect the change you want in the world. Some might say, well, what's stopping you from, just going around killing people or, just being a complete selfish asshole and doing whatever you want? Well, that kind of ignores the history of who we are as human beings and what we've evolved to become. Yeah, I'm using that word, evolve. And I think it discounts the good nature that we all have. That doesn't mean that it's an inherent good nature that's coming from God, but it's from our realization that there's more positives that can happen when we work together than working against each other, which sounds kind of, what's the word I'm thinking of? It sounds kind of, la-di-da, like idealistic, but people do it every day in all these small, insignificant ways. Perhaps it might seem like that, but they do build to something. When I think about, again, I'm going to sound like I'm proselytizing here, the world around us. Sometimes I'm just blown away by how, let's say I do get in that car accident. We have built these intricate networks where there's people that will come and see that I'm in trouble and try to help me. They will call an ambulance. These trained professionals will come to treat me. They will take me to a hospital where there are these people that are devoted, because they're underpaid often, not doing it out of financial reasons, but because they have this inner calling to help people. So I can get treatment, and I can perhaps survive, which is all being done, and it can be done without the necessity of a belief in God.
Right. Sounds like the West has gotten to you, man. You need to just come back.
Oh, yeah.
Just
I can anticipate that some people will hear my story and think, oh, well, it's clear what happened. You moved to the West and you became corrupted by Western influences, Satan, you name it.
Yeah, there's all sorts of interesting things that we'll probably get. Okay. I think there's probably much more to your life that we didn't even touch on.
But I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's do the callers.
Cool. So we're gonna switch it up here. Let's get these callers to come in. And by the way, Aleem, I have about, let me make this clear here. I have about 80 minutes, so roughly no more than 2 hours of our stream today. I want to have you back though, and we could do this
love
again.
To come back. Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. Okay, so Muslims only. Call in. And then we want to have people call in. Be respectful. Also, why do you think he left? We left. If you feel like addressing me on my Christian side, you're more than welcome to. And then what I'll do is I'll pin this in the chat. So everybody, I'm replacing the pin message. Go subscribe to Secular Spirit, and that will also be in the description. Got it pinned on that side. Let me go to the other one now. And I'm going to put this in on the YouTube side. If you're watching from any other platforms and you're a Muslim and you want to call in to, address the topic, go ahead and do so. By the way, if people do call in and they're not addressing the topic, look, don't take this personal, but we're not going off into any and every topic under the sun. I prefer to try and stick to the topics that be, if that makes sense. So, all right. Go ahead. If you want to go ahead and do your thing. Yeah. So, all right. Aleem is fixing some things, his sunlight, all that kind of stuff, trying to get it right. We already have one in the back. I see the caller in the back here. I want to make sure, is this the same guy that last time? Let me write a message here to the back real quick. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. And when you come back, let me know when you're back, Aleem, because we got a few super chats I want to hit real quick before we get callers. And feel free to super chat. You interrupt the call, we'll take the super chats as we go. It helps keep doing what we're doing here at MythVision. All right, just writing to our person in the back here. All right, Aleem, you back?
I'm back.
We go. Awesome. Okay, so let me get these super chats real quick out of the way. Thank you so much for that super chat. Right out the gate, Vijay Saful, wow, used to dislike Muslims, but on Twitter, Saudi are very kind, more secular. In Christ, we are children of God. All of our sins are wiped away. God is obsessed with us. Sent his only son for us. Appreciate the super chat. I don't know if most Saudis would even agree with that, or if they might think that, you're just lost in Christianity and you don't get it. God doesn't have a son, clearly in Islam. But I know that you're very kind here. And again, we don't all see eye to eye. We definitely don't agree on the Christian stuff. Did you want to comment on that, or do you want me to move on?
Go ahead. Please move on.
Okay. Next super chat is, again, here is your time, MythVision. You have got to this moment. You have his audience. Preach the gospel that you know so well. Reformed theology, perhaps. And again, I just want to thanks for the super chat, but I did already let you know that I'm not a Christian. And I don't proselytize. I have no interest in trying to sell you my gospel or anything like that. I am interested in critical thinking, critical scholarship, stuff like that. Okay, well, look, can you just do me a favor back in the back, Rajal? I think it's Rajal. Forgive me. Just let me know you're real quick backstage. I will not show your identity on stage. I just need to know there's a real person behind the account. It saves me the headache on YouTube because you never know. I just need to make sure that this is the same person because I think I know who the caller is. I think. Okay. Here we go. All right, what's up, man?
Good evening. Hello.
Hey, welcome, man.
Nice to meet you again, and hello to you, Aleem, secular spirit.
That voice sounds very familiar. How's it going?
Yeah, nice to meet the both of you again. I am here to have an engaging conversation. Please, let's just actually stick to the topic. I promise, no fiffle-flaffer at all.
Okay.
How's everything been with the both of you before we begin? Everything been okay?
It's a beautiful
Can't
day.
complain.
Can't complain. I'm glad you guys are having a nice day. So, Aleem, secular spirit, I must ask you. Over half of your life you spent as a former Muslim. Obviously, do you think this experience has been filled with more feelings of liberation, or do you still go through periods of questioning where you actually ask yourself, maybe I could have done something a bit better?
Done something a bit better in what sense? Just so I can answer your question.
Well, usually with people who leave religions, they always ask themselves a very the series of questions they ask themselves are often they follow the same pattern. One common question they usually ask is, did I do this honestly? Did I do this with the full set of honest thoughts that I should ideally have in mind, such as trying to find the truth, for example, the biggest one there. Do you think that you tried your hardest in maintaining an honest outlook in how things appear to you when you first began thinking critically about Islam? If that question makes sense.
That is a really good question. And I would say, yes, I did give it the best examination I could because I didn't want to stop being Muslim. I didn't want to leave it behind. But being in that process, as I mentioned earlier, just a depression where I kept on just cycling through the same thoughts over and over and over again, the same questions over and over again for, I would say, 2 years. And it was in that second year that I began questioning Islam. I left no stone unturned. Believe me, all the kinds of philosophical questions I asked myself, looking things up online, all of the big debates. What came first? Like, is God evil, or did evil come from God, or you name it? I thought about it all, and when I did leave, and this is my nature as a person, so it takes me a long time to make a decision. But once I make that decision, I know that I'm certain in it, as far as you can be in these things, of course. But I knew that I couldn't believe in Islam anymore. So for me, it was kind of not an option anymore to stay a believer because all of the reasons that there could possibly be that I could find for believing in Islam, they just didn't work for me.
Brilliant answer. I think from what I've heard you say right now, I get the sense that you actually did put a lot of effort into questioning, into searching, into trying to understand, and I commend you for that. Now this answer you've given me has brought up more questions. So, with the philosophy and the theology of Islam, what do you think you took the most issue with? What do you think catalyzed your now unbelief in the religion?
That's a really good question. I think it was the central concept of it that just didn't make sense to me. If you remember earlier, I was saying how much of Islam seemed like the kind of thing that would be made by human beings to make sense of life. And the central concept here is what I would say is this perfect being, this being that doesn't need anything, it's all powerful, all knowing, for some reason decided to create us. And why did he create us? Well, We don't know. So, like some Muslims will argue to worship him, to recognize him, because that's part of perfection, to be recognized. I learned some variations of those arguments. But to me, it fell apart there because I couldn't see the need. Because why would a perfect being need anything? Why would, and if you don't want to use the word need, why would a perfect God want to do this in the first place? And what I saw in the central concept of Islam is the answer is ultimately a non-answer. Allahu A'lam. God knows best, loosely translated. Just trust. Basically, what Muslims are taught is if you find these kinds of questions and you have no answer for them, just trust in God. He knows what's best for you, so just believe him. And once I saw that Islam kind of worked in this circular way, that's the thing that just didn't work for me anymore.
So it's like that concept of not being able to find a concrete answer and just linking all same things back to one central like premise is what kind of helped you realize or
Yeah.
think to yourself, yeah, this might not make sense. I have a question. So when you say the central premise didn't stick out to you about how a perfect being is creating everything if he is self-sufficient, do you think that it could be a possibility that this perfect being created you because you needed him? He did it out of his benevolence, his love for you. Do you think that could help as an explanation?
No, because then you could kind of look at it the way, why create us in the first place? It still brings us back to that question. So let's say he created us to need him. It still doesn't quite answer why we were created in the first place. Again, it kind of becomes circular. He created us to need him, and we need him because he created us.
Oh, yeah, no. I think what I'm trying to say is automatically, by default, we need God, right? And God, that's what the Islamic theology, that's what's touted out in Islamic theology. You are in need of God. God does not need you. So the reason why you're brought into existence is because you are in need of God, and He is being benevolent, as you know, He is all merciful, compassionate. Out of His compassionate and kind nature, He is then bringing you into existence to then nourish you and to provide you with this requirement of being in need of Him, being in reception of God. Don't you think that it's a beautiful don't you think it's a beautiful backstory behind the human creation about how God's benevolence sticks out so much? He's willing to bring what once wasn't into existence now is into existence just to simply fulfill their wishes, to fulfill their needs, their requirements.
I have to go back to what I shared earlier. I think it's a nice story, and this is not going into like the negative dark side of it, which I talked about earlier. But even if we look at it that way, I think there is still that question of motivation from the perspective of the deity, and that's the thing that I couldn't wrap my mind around. I still think that there's a why there that me as a human, as a skeptic, as a creature that desires to understand the meaning behind things, wants answered.
So you obviously don't find a way to try kind of make this sense to you. So I'll have to say, don't you think it's at the very least, don't you think it's an incredible act of benevolence to bring this being so flawed and so, material into existence to fulfill its needs despite you needing nothing from it? Don't you think this is a benevolent act done by an immensely powerful God?
I really don't, because you mentioned that word, and Derek, you can chime in here too if you want. That word
Please do.
flawed. Why did God make us flawed? Why did He make us flawed and then needing Him when He's all powerful and could have just, let's say, hypothetically made us a perfect being alongside Him?
Well, because God's intelligence is so vast and so so grand that the perfect world He could have possibly created was for human beings to be flawed creatures, for the Earth to be orbiting the sun, for a heliocentric model of the universe. This is what He believed would be the perfect universe, and by default, that would have to resort to human beings being flawed. and therefore being in need of his grandiloquence.
Do you want me to chime in? I
Go,
mean,
go
look,
ahead.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
look, this is interesting. One of the things that gets me is how high they have placed the deity by the time Islam is on the scene. It's, philosophically speaking, like this God, I mean, they're trying to fix all the kinks of Trinitarianism and the various forms of deicide, and how do you explain the sun is God too, and all this stuff going on. But when you think about it, you know, how did the problem of evil even come into existence? I go back to Plato, and it's really interesting to hear how he did it, right? He's one of the OGs trying to like systematize creation in his Timaeus, and he points out that you have this like perfect deity that then has children, and the children are perfect, but they're clearly not the ultimate one deity. And then through those children being, you know, Zeus and the various other gods that might be, they create humans from clay. And the humans end up becoming flawed. So it creates this kind of apologetic, even in Plato's thinking, divorcing the evil that ends up in the world from the original creator, blaming it on in-between intermediaries. And I think to myself, how philosophically, how do you honestly get a perfect God? That if it's absolutely perfect, how do you go from absolute perfection to really allowing corruption and evil to even exist at all? It's a really odd thing, unless it's already in its nature somehow. Can something perfect create something that is evil and bad? And wouldn't that somehow then be part of its nature? I'm thinking in my head, like, how do you wrap your head around the problem of evil with an absolute perfect God, you know?
Could to add to what you said, could something be perfectly evil too? And would that perfect evil be God?
That's a brilliant question. Brilliant question. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I have not heard it before. But, because I haven't. Brilliant question. But I'll say this. To any skeptic who's actually done their due diligence on religion, it's natural to assume that maximally great being and evil in this world, most of it unnecessary, is a non sequitur, doesn't follow. But I'll ask yourself this. So I'll ask you this. Do you think, and this is open for discussion, do you think that even though there is a maximally, for your view, assume that there is a maximally like good and perfect God, don't you think that if this evil were to allow for a greater, more broader good, more broader expanse in terms of human progression and in terms of God's plan for the universe, don't you think that this evil is kind of like a stab in the jab for more of a broader and more expansive,
Like,
broader framework? Yeah.
Would it be safe to say, and I want to still man your point, because I think this is, my mind went to almost like, is evil a necessity in order to achieve that? And in my mind, I can imagine a world, if a fickle human such as Derek can imagine a world where if I was, let's say, able to do the magical, powerful things that God can do, and I could inherently just create you with the absolute peak. I don't need to put you through all the gradual gradation of getting to that point. I just make it that way. It seems problematic to me. Like, I look at my children, right? Now I live in a world, like we all live in a world that struggles. We have a hard time. Life can be tough. And I look at my children and I go, I don't want my kids to go through the shit I went through. I went through addiction for like 10 years. It was hell on earth, literally. And I don't want them to go through that. So I do everything in my power because I love.
Brilliant source of compassion, yeah.
Huh?
Brilliant source of compassion from you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that I don't want them to experience that because I love them. I want them to learn, though. Yeah. And sometimes I know that you do need to go through things in order to learn, because that's the world we have, that we live in. It's weird. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I thought this the other day, and I said, life's backwards. When we're old, we get it, or at least more. We get it more. And we look back and go, I wish I knew this when I was 8 or 10, when that decision came in front of me. And we learn backwards because I think that's just how life works, the way it's made. I would not do that to my kids. If I really loved them, I would just be like, you're gonna get this. I'm just thinking in perfect terms though. So as what was the famous atheist Stephen Fry asked the question, the Catholic says, look, what if he's right and the God of the Bible is true and you appear through the pearly gates and he says to you, here I am, I'm real. And he goes, how dare you? Bone cancer in children, and he's like, well, I wouldn't want to on his terms. But if he appeared before the Olympian deities, those of Jupiter or Zeus, and he knows that they're messed up. He knows those gods don't have it.
They're not perfect.
They're not perfect. That's the problem, is that getting from perfection to imperfection, a lot of people will use free will as an excuse to try and like distance the deity from the human, as if the deity didn't already know. They're absolutely perfect. So it's kind of a rough thing for me to wrap my head around.
Well, it's a brilliant question, brilliant concern you brought up, and I'm sorry if this gets overly repetitive, me praising your concerns, but what I'm saying is, here's the thing. We are, essentially what God is God operates on a different framework compared to a father's love. I commend you for appreciating and loving your children so much that you wouldn't put them through suffering. But the thing with God is that God doesn't work under that framework, primarily because not only is he much more intelligent in comparison to such fickle humans as like us, he's much more intelligent like us, amplified by, I don't know, an infinity fold, whatnot. But not only that, but God does not let his love or let his, compassion get in the way of what he does best, what he should be doing for his creations. And naturally, as human beings are adaptive creatures, we adapt to our surroundings, right? I mean, for goodness sake, the people we are now, we're literally just products of a long progression of natural selection and laborious adaptation. So what I'm trying to get at is that God puts us through natural evil, through evil in this world, worldly evil, because as we are adaptive creatures, we do respond best when we're given tough trials to follow. We become better people once we actually have tasted the dirt on the ground. That's why evil exists, and that's why I don't think the problem of evil would be a good argument to try and disprove God. Does that make sense?
It does. What I want to point out, and I was just listening and thinking of some of the words you chose to use. What happens with these kinds of arguments is assumptions start getting snuck in, whether knowingly or not, unintentionally or intentionally. You used words like framework. You used a word for God of should, and there's a lot of things here where, if we're assuming that God is this perfect being, why would God have to operate under the constraints of any framework? Why would God have to limit himself in any way? Should God have to do anything or not do anything? Why do we have this framework, which we're assuming that exists, where human beings elevate themselves through suffering, through trauma, or through evil? If God is this perfect being, he could have made it in a different way. I think, Derek, that's what you were trying to say earlier too.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get from this perfect thing to the muck and grime of the reality we see around us? And I think that's a bridge that we can't really traverse, to be honest, beyond making assumptions and saying, as I was saying earlier, Allahu A'lam, God knows best.
Well,
real quick, super chats interrupt. Sorry. Thank you so much, Sitorny IK. Thank you for the super chat. Does that make sense? Actually, no. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah, interesting answer. So, well, you brought up an interesting point. God is a maximally perfect being, which is true. Therefore, he could obviously have created a different world that wouldn't require all of these laborious steps to try and reach this grand conclusion. Problem is that I'm directly contradicting what you're saying, and I'm saying God couldn't have done it. It's the only logically possible, most best world for us to live in,
But
right? That's why.
that assumes that we can't imagine a better one. I mean, think about it. Even in the Revelation, right? There is going to be this perfection, a purging of the evil, a judgment. If that's within the Revelation. So, like, I think of it within Christian terms. I don't know Islam through and through in the various doctrines and theologies in the depths of all their schools. I imagine it's very much complex, like Christianity, with its various doctrines and theologies. But this world is in a fallen state. Sin exists in this problematic situation where God's going to have to come in and fix it. That means it's not where it should be, which would mean it fell somehow. It's not in the best of possible worlds, because if it was, he wouldn't have to fix it somehow or rid it of evil or destroy the wickedness or whatever.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's because of us. Like this world initially was a perfect world, was, practically like paradise. We call that Jannah.
If I may ask you, just because you know the Garden of Eden story,
Yeah.
how does this spell out in the Islamic version? Because my understanding is
Same thing.
God knows everything, right?
Yeah.
So how the hell did the serpent end up in this garden? Like, how can the deceiver, the Satan, be in the garden to allow us to fall? How can a father let their child go and get into this pickle? Did he want that? Is that what Allah wanted, according to Islam? Because many, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I am sorry for interrupting you, but if
fine.
I may just answer the question. Like I was saying, it is all down to us. God does not cause us to do things. We have the free will to pick and choose things, right? Like we choose to do good or we choose to do evil. In this world, it was once a perfect paradise, but our mother and father, Adam and Eve, ruined it by falling into the trickery of Satan as the serpent. Therefore, God had to punish them by banishing them from the, I can't remember what it's called in Islam, but from the Garden of Eden. And as a result of that, we're now in a flawed world where, we're human beings who suffer, both naturally, as in undergoing the struggle of being a human, and actually interacting with the real world. We're subject to all sorts of diseases and, external dangers. But problem is with that is that you're kind of assuming that just because God knows something, because we know God knows everything, but just because God has foreknowledge, that somehow that implies causation. And I feel like that's kind of like a very big leap you're taking. So just because I know something might happen doesn't mean I caused it, right?
I think we're going back to before that, like foreknowledge of why create us that way in the first place. Whether he knows what we're going to do or not, why do it in the first place? To your point, Derek. So why create all these parameters of the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, and real quick, before we answer that in depth, super chats came in. Doc Pleromanot, really, thank you. Bless you, my friend. If God is omnipotent, character development via catastrophe looks inefficient at best.
I love that.
So the claim moralizes pain after the fact. It doesn't justify it beforehand. Thank you. We want to address this, gentlemen?
Character development via catastrophe. That's like every Avengers movie ever made.
If God is omnipotent, character development via catastrophe looks inefficient at best. So the claim moralizes the pain after the fact. It doesn't justify it beforehand. Interesting statement there. It does. The only way I can seem to justify it is the same point I've given you gentlemen before, which is God has created this world. It's the best of all possible worlds. And since he is the maximally great being, he has to naturally adapt to what this world needs. And since he's all powerful, he's obviously capable of doing that. Moralizing that pain, on the other hand, yeah, that kind of, at best it does do that, but justifying it, the only way you can justify it is just accepting the theological claim, which is this is the best possible world. It couldn't have been otherwise. We have to suffer.
Thank you for that. And then Valena, thank you for the super chat. People, wake up. Your actions mean everything. Thank you, Valena. Appreciate the super chat. I agree with that sentiment. So, okay, back to the Garden of Eden and this whole issue. I have, like, obviously biblical issues, but that's why I don't know really what Islamic Genesis story, because I think there's different theologies within Islam, like there is within Christianity. You ask a predestinarian, someone who's more deterministic, versus someone who thinks libertarian free will is the case. They're going to have completely different explanations for the origin of evil and how things ended up the way they did. And I think the same might be true if I'm speaking to a certain Muslim caller who might have a certain view versus another. Most, from what I understand, just go to free will to get God off the hook. The ones that are tougher try to go, oh, no, I'm not ashamed. God creates everything. He does it all. Like, but even your point earlier, if I know that there's going to be a bomb drop somewhere and 50,000 people might die, I know it. I know it beforehand, but I do nothing to stop it. Unless this entire world is a trick, everything we have intuited to be in our ethical systems, every religion's intuitions, every human's intuitions are completely made up to where bad is actually good. And death is actually great, which is why we see so much fossil and death of life in this world that we've lived in. And evolution ends up being the height of good. And we die, and then God goes, you know what? You fit right in. All that ugly, nasty is actually good. The good is actually bad. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around how the God is benevolent and yet allows such a world where things I could get banned for saying on YouTube that I'm not going to say are happening on a daily basis to humans. And they might say, well, that a lot of that's from humans themselves. But if the power is that God has that power to stop these things, it really, really does make me think they can't be a parent. They can't have the same love in the same way. That's why deism would make more sense in my mind. If you're forced to have a creator, let it be not concerned with what we have going on. It made it, dropped the ball, and dipped out, because I can't sit back and watch you and say, I love you, and these things are happening, unless, like I said, we get there and then God reveals to us, guess what? Everything you thought, all of those thought processes and your intuitions were all bullshit. You had it all wrong. I mean, and if that's I don't know if that's the world we're living in, we're screwed.
Well, I have a question for you, MythVision. Now you've pointed out deism, so I'll pose an example to you. Let's say I have a factory, and in this factory there are about hundreds of workers, right? And let's say I'm running the factory. Would it make sense that I keep things running, that I fund their salaries, that I fund their machinery, and then I just book it, that I leave? Would it make sense? Like, that's why I believe, like, kind of deism just kind of like, it just doesn't make sense, because, God is, obviously he's all compassionate, all loving, all merciful, good, whatnot. So, like, deism cannot work under that framework. It has to be a God that is involved. It cannot be otherwise, because it just wouldn't make sense to leave the factory workers. You know what I mean?
Using our own intuitions again. We can only go based off of our intuitions and what we've observed and experienced and stuff. And so, again, to push back with an opposite deity is to say, how do you know? How do you know that I get why it makes sense why a human might not do that. But then again, humans also set things up and let managers run their businesses, and they go off and they chill with pina coladas on the beach somewhere, and their business is being run perfectly fine. They can see it from wherever they're at, and they don't have to do anything about it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just making up a hypothetical. By the way, 2 super chats real quick, guys.
Go ahead.
Victor Engelman, thank you so much. If there is a tri-omni being, free will is impossible. We do what God forces us to do by making the universe in a way he knew leads to us doing it.
So is he arguing for a more deterministic framework, like how everything is kind of set in stone, that free will is non-existent? Is that what he's trying to do?
It seems to be, at least the form of free will would be like libertarian free will. We might think we have some, but I think this is a more deterministic super
Well,
chat.
this brings up a very good question now, and this is pertaining to the topic, and this for the both of you. Do you think free will exists? Do you think the concept is actually do you think it makes sense? Do you think it exists at the very least, to some degree?
Well, like Derek was saying, I think some version of it exists where, I just picked up this phone and I did it of my own volition. But to go into the root of why I chose to do that and I didn't pick up my water bottle instead, I don't really know why I did that. Like, why did I pick one and not the other? So I think that's where the free will element kind of loses its power for me, because I really don't know why I did that.
Do you think free will and freedom of choice can be equated? Do you think they're the same thing?
I think they're different, especially when we're talking about things in a philosophical way, and especially like in a religious discussion, because when we're talking about, do I really have a choice of leaving Islam or remaining Muslim in this world where we're assuming that there's this being, this deity that created me? I don't think so. I think that's where the free will component falls apart.
Gentlemen, real quick, sorry to interrupt. Super chats here. Vigi Soful, thank you so much. If Isaiah 53 is about the righteous remnant, why God pleased to crush the righteous servant? Verse 10. This only fits Jesus, who was our sacrifice for our sins. Appreciate the super chat. Again,
I defer to your expertise on this.
Look, there's I am planning on doing a call-in show where we deal with Isaiah 53 exclusively. I have much to say about this, but this is not the correct show right now to deal with this topic. If you feel like calling in, feel free to call in. I really do appreciate the super chat, but I will say this. There have been people who've identified that suffering servant with several other prophets in the time of Isaiah, including Isaiah himself. But most commonly, the critical scholarly view is that it is a righteous remnant of Israel, obviously, that is under persecution, that is dealing with the troubles of this prophet back then that he's describing in the text. So you could say a lot of people fit this idea that have been suffered, that have been martyred or whatever later on. I believe the teacher of righteousness, if I'm not mistaken, in the Qumran sect, identified with Isaiah 53 as well. So later Jews may have seen individuals and tried to highlight it there. Dr. Romanot wants to add to the discussion of what we said with Victor, guys. Says, I think Victor is getting at, if the will is free, why is it already known and fixed? If it's fixed, in what sense is it free?
Well, the will isn't fixed. The will is known, but it isn't fixed. Like, it's basically God's knowledge is not constant, it's adaptive. Like, he knows what happens before it happens, but it's only because he's able to adapt to the information that he's given. It's not.
So he's given information?
No, as in when I say given, I don't mean literally given, but I mean like the information he has, like the information he's in possession of. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a different kind of philosophical way to negotiate with how the world functions and operates and goes from one cause and effect to the next. I guess it just depends on the person you ask, right? Because when I was a Calvinist, I believed God caused all things, including good and evil. And I read Isaiah, the very place, right near the place our last super chatter brought up, where Isaiah 40 something, I create light, I create darkness, I create good, I create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And I think to myself, so God just knows what's going to happen, but he's not active in causing all things to happen.
Well, like the thing is, where does the element of free choice, like free will, come into this in someone's life? Because you're born in the time that you're born in the area that you're born, you experience all these, you're born to parents that you can't control. All of these things are determined by God. Like he created this world. He created you to have the limitations and flaws that you have. So let's say we're talking about someone who decided to leave Islam rather than stay in it. it's really hard to determine where that element of free will comes in when you have all of these variables out of that individual's control. And I think that that's really where like free will just does not work when you have this kind of framework with this kind of God that Islam has.
Rajal, real quick, Victor Engelman says, I say free will doesn't solve the problem of evil. That's what Victor is trying to say ultimately. Thank you so much for the super chat. So, Rajal, if you will, give us one more, and then I want to take our next caller because I only have so much time, and I really appreciate you calling in. These are always a blast.
Feel free to call me Mikhail, not Rajal.
Call you what?
Feel free to call me by my actual name, Mikhail, not Rajal.
Mikhail. Okay, Mikhail. I got you. I
don't even know why I chose that name. I thought.
Were you going just for like Rajul as in man in Arabic?
Yeah, but I don't know why I misspelled it. So anyway,
yep.
I'd say it's a lot to take in here, really, but because there are a couple of arguments that I have not heard before. But I would say the best robust argument for free will is that it's just it's essentially one of the more significant components in this adaptive universe that God has created. He's created a planet where he has placed around billions of human beings, and he understands everything that each and every one of them are doing, but he doesn't necessarily cause them in the sense that, yeah, sure, he places you in the situation. He places you with certain parents, certain belief system. He creates your brain structure. He personally organizes every single life event that will ever happen to you. Right? Every single one. He knows what sexuality you'll have. He knows what name you'll be given. He knows what school you'll go to. He knows every single minute and macro detail about your human life. And he also knows the one important thing, how long you'll actually live. But he doesn't cause those things. He doesn't cause whatever decisions you make within the frameworks he's placed you in. He's just slowly observing this small creature he's placed in this vial navigate itself through all these paths and mazes. So I'd say that free will is just what bridges the gap between God's decision and your reaction. If that makes sense.
I think it only works when we look at let's say we're looking at someone who built an ant farm. They brought all the supplies, they brought the ants, they put them in the ant farm and then just observed. I don't think that's equivalent to a deity that literally created every single component of that ant farm, determined all of the flaws, all of the limitations, all of the abilities of the ants, so on and so forth, and determined all of the variables that would lead to what ended up happening and is in control of them. It just doesn't translate.
Well, yeah, of course, your decisions are summations of the conditions you're placed in. So every single decision you make is just ultimately what is caused beforehand.
I would still rebut this idea with the engineer would still be responsible.
I agree.
You see, no matter what you do, it's like buying the car. It's like engineers built the car. It has, ultimately ways of becoming flawed, but you drove it. Therefore, we're going to blame you. You made it to where it could be flawed. And that is the reason I think to begin with a perfect deity, that's a problem. If you have a God that comes along and says, I don't have it all figured out. Look, I'm still learning. Okay, guess what? We're in a different type of world. And the revelation you just described about God seems not quite to match reality.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's what.
Every decision you make is ultimately a summation of the conditions you placed in. Like the way humans work is you place a person in a certain condition, you create them a certain way, and they'll produce a certain output. What you're doing is, as a God, with foreknowledge and the ability to predict, and also the engineer of everything in existence, ultimately you cannot be acquitted of the charges placed on you for a person who does something extremely heinous. Because not only have you coded them that way, but you've also foreseen it that way. You did nothing to stop it. And that's ultimately why I take the deterministic framework, why I say that everything is ultimately set in stone and that it just manifests in every decision you make.
Mm.
Yeah.
Valena, thank you so much for the super chat. Free will, it's a choice. You want water or a gun? I don't know what that was referring to, but thank you so much for the super
I'd
chat.
rather have the water, please.
Mikhail,
I second that.
I really appreciate you calling in, man. I got one more caller I need to get to here before we end up wrapping things up. We didn't get too many callers. I thanks so much for calling in and being kind as always.
Yeah, of course. By the way, just to let the audience know, I'm an ex-Muslim. I'm not a Muslim anymore. I just came here to just have a nice conversation, discuss with Aleem and Mr. MythVision.
Thank
Yeah. Thank you guys. And
Thank
Aleem,
you.
I look forward to our live stream and talk about it at the end of the month. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a
Good
good
to
one.
talk to you, Mikhail.
Yep. Looking forward to next time. Real quick, before we take our next call, let me hit these other super chats. Gaddis, thank you so much, Gaddis. Evil tries to destroy that which is beautiful. It does not know manifestations of beauty and potential of beauty aren't the same. God is potential, not actual.
I don't even know where to start with that one.
Yeah. I don't even know how. Where do we get evil? We're introducing the idea of evil into the equation.
Where did evil? I've heard some arguments that evil is the lack of God,
right.
And even then, it's like, well, if God is all powerful, all knowing, couldn't he have still controlled it? I don't know.
Yeah, and even I can only speak from the Bible here off the top of my head, but in Isaiah it talks about, I believe it's Isaiah. Again, we keep going back to the same prophet's book, but there's this idea that if I go to heaven, I'm there, right? If I go to Sheol, the grave, to the underworld, if you will, I'm there. There's nowhere you can go to escape me. So it's kind of hard to imagine how this perfect being and then yet evil can still be introduced in my mind. Anyway, Doc Pluralmanot, thank you so much. That was incoherent. Infallibly known plus could do otherwise is the tension. If you could do otherwise, the prior knowledge could be wrong. If the knowledge can't be wrong, you won't do otherwise. Interesting. Like in the phraseology, it conflicts with each other. So thank you. And then don't choose faulty car. It's your choice. Valena writes, thank you so much for the super chat, Valena. I think 99.9% of humans on earth, if not 100%, when they go to buy a car, they trust they're trusting the company, whether it's Honda, whether it's whatever it might be, that their car is going to work good. And when it does,
what if you're given the car too?
Yeah, there's that too, right? I was gifted my first little rust bucket of a car from my grandfather, and I had to build it up and do good with it. But some people get the car and out the gate wreck it. Not by their own fault. Something happened and it wasn't on their end. So at some point you got to wonder, is the engineer doing it the right way? So that's my thoughts. Thank you again, Valena. Appreciate you being here always in the chat. All right. Our next caller is Mark. What's up, Mark?
Hello. Basically, I am Muslim. I live in London. I don't know if you guys can hear me all right. I'm using my AirPods. So.
Yes,
we can hear you.
All good, yeah? Okay, perfect. So, I don't know, if you want the view according to Islam, as far as my knowledge goes, right, I can give you that. If you want to get into more philosophical about free will, evil, absence of evil, and stuff like this, we can get into that too. I'm not claiming to be super smart guy, but just as much as I know, basically. So I don't know where you guys want to start with it. If you want, I can start with the Islamic point of view, since it's a topic, I guess.
Well, Derek, do you want to maybe ask the question that's what the video was mainly about? Maybe it'd be interesting to get his perspective on that.
So, Mark, if I may, just to point out, and thank you for coming in, hanging out, chilling. You're not. Thanks for being. Yeah, thanks for your kindness. Aleem, the whole episode, here was our goal with the episode, and what we'd like to discuss is Aleem wanted to come on and just have Muslims kind of discuss with him, because he's ex-Muslim, why do you think he left? From the Muslim perspective, why do you think Aleem left? And
or if not me specifically, why ex-Muslims, why people leave Islam in general as well?
Yeah, to have that kind of conversation rather than a philosophical necessarily. We did that in the last caller, but we'd like to talk about this topic if possible.
So I think what I can do is basically I think why he might have left, because I think is an answer for him to give. But either way, I'm gonna do like what I did in terms of research when it came to choosing the religion. Even though I'm born in a Muslim family in Albania, where I'm originally from, we don't like practice religions. We just say we're Muslim or Christian, but like we do like just basically, like I used to eat pork when I was a kid, even in a Muslim family, or even drink like quite late. But then I said to myself, right? My family raised me with the idea. I'm gonna get to the point why he might have left, right? My family raised me with the idea that don't do evil, because evil, or like don't steal, don't lie to people, don't use people to get your wealth up or stuff like this, because it's unfair and God will judge you. So it was like a fear instilled to me from my parents as a God idea, right? And for me, that wasn't enough. And I thought, hold on a minute. If it benefits me, why should I care too much about, for example, if I wanted to open a clothing company, why should I care too much about child labor in Bangladesh, for example? Fundamentally, that is bad, but it doesn't harm me. And since somebody else will do it, why not me doing it so I can become a millionaire or whatever, right? So before I went to literally like move God outside the picture, I needed to make sure he exists or not. So I had two options. First option was obviously science, but once you read what science is measuring and arriving in theories and conclusions, repeated experiments. And obviously, if God exists, I don't expect any of us to measure him or be able to measure him. So the only explanation is what every one of us has, I hope, I believe, logic and senses, right? So like if something makes sense, then if something makes sense, that must explain stuff. And if it explains every question I have, then obviously it will fit in my belief system, right? And then I made a list of questions. And some of the questions I was hearing about you guys talking about, like free will. How can we have free will while also God knows everything? For me, that was like, wow, okay, this is contradictory. That doesn't make sense. And what other questions I had? For example, the other question is, who the hell asked me to participate on Risk in Eternity? Because that's a bit like crazy when you think about it, right? Like if I'm going to participate, if I'm going to participate in an earth filled with evil and risk eternity forever, if a fully just God exists, surely he must have asked me, right? Otherwise, like that makes him an evil God. Can there be an evil God?
What do you think about that, Aleem? Let Aleem chime in. This is interesting. I want to hear. What do you think about that idea that, if I may reword it in a way, it's like, I used to believe too. I'd go, before I came to Earth, maybe God did. There's like a gate you walk up to, and you're like,
I
hey,
have the
God.
answer for that. But
yeah. I just want to like paint this idea and just say, I kind of wondered. I walked up to God, and God went, "Hey, you're going to Earth. This is going to be your life. You choose it or you don't." And I chose it, and I went, and then I was like, but now I don't remember any of that. Of course, I have no way to prove that that's what happened, but nonetheless, I used to think that that's how I accepted my fate before going in or something like that. What are your thoughts about this whole idea, Liam? Do you think that would get God off the hook in a sense, the problem of evil and stuff?
That we somehow, like, our souls before we were born kind of agreed, like signed the contract. And I don't think so, because he still created us with all those limitations and knew what we were going to do. So it's like, just because us as his creation signed off on it doesn't mean that it suddenly becomes okay, because he created us and knew we would sign off. It's like a meaningless formality, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The other problem I would have just bringing this up would be, I mean, maybe I knew what I was really getting myself into then. I don't know now. And like, I still don't know what the hell. I mean, there's sometimes I'll go to bed at night and I think about my death, and I think about, man, how bad is it going to hurt? What the hell is going to happen? I'm just being honest. And, did I know all of that in this prior, which I have no evidence of it being the case, but like, anyway, it's I think it's a way for humans to try to make sense of the world we live in, even though I don't think it's true. I think there's
To
reasons
comfort
humans,
them.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
to comfort
us.
them, as we were talking about earlier. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, please, Mark,
Sorry.
continue.
Yeah, sorry I cut you off, Mark. I just
So basically, I think it's very beautifully made. I'm so sorry for the names again, man. Like,
oh, our names?
what's yes,
Aleem
please.
and
I'm so
Derek.
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay if you get them wrong.
Derek
Yeah.
and Aleem. So Aleem made a very good point when he said, like, even if we were questioned and that to be brought into the earth and tested, right? Still doesn't make it less bad, because like if God knows the future, why is he even questioning us? What's the point? Like he's still like pulling us out as puppets, right? Like here's earth, do your thing. Now the concept of God, or you can call it necessary being, like in Islam, comes with certain attributes, right? And the one of the attribute is he's all knowing. The other attribute is all good, which will come to evil later. But pointing to Aleem's point, the way I found that answer, because it connects with the fact, how can we have free will if he knows the future, is I think we need to look at God as, if he is all powerful and omnipotent and he can create like all this variation, can create quantum physics, for example, quantum fields, and everything can exist at once. Think of as Aleem's life, my life, and your life as a possibility of choices he made, where you cannot choose outside of this labyrinth of choices. But each choice you make comes down to your free will, because you either choose left, right, front, or back, right? Sorry, not front and back. You choose the path on the right, path on the left. And then that path opens more paths, which you choose another path. But now think of this, although we can't, I think, in a quantum level where my choices can affect Aleem's choices or Derek's choices or somebody else's choices. This still gives us a free will of choosing whether good or evil, but in the same sense, doesn't make God absent from knowing any possible choice you can choose, because you cannot choose outside of the quantum board, the quantum labyrinth, for example. And this is also my theory, is that the moment where we get the prophecies, or where God says, for example, in our holy book, as names of people, they're going to go hell, right? The moment why he says that is because he knows that going forward now, since time cannot turn back according to physics, this person doesn't have the choice in the labyrinth to believe in God anymore. So it's up to God now to end his life and everything and stuff like this.
If I may, and thank you for elaborating there. The hell issue, okay, is such a problematic one for me, especially today. Okay, as a believer, it was hard. It was hard for me as a believer. Now it's even more.
It's very hard.
It's very hard, even as a believer. You admit, as a believer, it's like, 100%. How do I?
No, it was for me, but I can explain.
So, well, I think we should try to have conversation as much as possible in these areas as we discuss these things. And I want you to chime in too, Aleem, because for me, it's like humans aren't God, right? We all agree humans aren't God. They don't know. They don't have it all figured out. And if I'm a benevolent God, usually people will say, I'm benevolent, so I give them free will. That's his sign of love, is that he gives them free will. But truth be told, for me, I want their best well-being, even if that means coercion. I want them to have the best. I don't want them to be tortured. I don't want them to go through the worst punishment and then, of course, burn away. I don't know if they're annihilationist. I'm not sure exactly what the position is in terms of hell, whether you burn up for all eternity or if you stay conscious or whatever. It doesn't matter. Either way is horrific. I think to myself, like, this is like, you're looking at a bug. This bug doesn't know shit. You know everything. And you're going to crush that bug. You're going to like allow the bug to destroy itself. It just doesn't make sense. I would look at that and go, what kind of person, would that be to allow the bugs, the humans, we're just insignificant, to allow them to go down that path if I love them. in any world. I just can't imagine it. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around. But Aleem, feel free to chime in and keep going.
Yeah, Mark, I just want to say one thing before we listen to how you kind of figured it out. So when I was growing up Muslim, this whole issue concerned me as well. Obviously, I was terrified about going to hell. And one of the things that confused me was I heard different versions of what happens to Muslims or people in general when they go to hell. So I had people like my grandparents who said, oh, if you are a good person, no matter if you're Muslim or you're an atheist or a Christian, whatever, you will go to heaven because God will see that you're a good person. So it doesn't matter. When I was in school, my Islamic education teachers would say a few things. So one version was, well, unless you're like this amazing, perfect Muslim, like you're the Prophet Muhammad himself, everyone is going to go to hell for a little bit to kind of atone for the sins you committed. And one visual depiction, this terrified me, was that there was this bridge and you would cross this bridge.
Yes. Yeah.
You know it. Okay. I forgot the name of it, but yes. So you have this
bridge. Bridge, yeah.
Yeah. So Derek, listen to this. So
okay.
every soul has to cross this bridge to enter paradise. If you're you're the amazing ideal Muslim, you're the Prophet Muhammad, you will sprint effortlessly across this bridge.
Right.
But if you committed sins in your life, the bridge will suddenly disappear, disintegrate beneath your feet, and you will fall and you will go to, let's say you're only mildly sinful. You'll go to hell for like a week or whatever. The time doesn't matter, but you will do your share and then you will go to paradise. So that was one version of it too. So I was always torn. If you don't believe in God, will you just go to hell for eternity? Does anyone go to hell to eternity? It seemed to be a bit of a mixed message. So I think looking back now, I think what it was is a lot of Muslims seeing how cruel and unfair it would be to send someone to hell for eternity when you created them. And so you'll even find Muslims who don't think hell is a real place. I think this exists with some Christians as well, where they think it's just like a state of being. It's not a physical place. So you're just like kind of suffer, like your soul is suffering, but it isn't an actual place of suffering because God wouldn't do that. So long story short, I think if you're a Muslim, you can find some kind of way to rationalize that question, and none of those rationalizations worked for me because it was, I think for me, what made more sense was this is a man-made story.
What's the name of the bridge again?
Sirat Bridge. It's called
Sirat Bridge.
I think with a T. I think
Sirat.
Just double check because it's been a while. Yeah, Sirat.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because there's an older story in the Zoroastrian religion. It's called the Chinvat Bridge, and there's two dogs that guard the bridge, and the righteous, like you said, it's also called the Bridge of Lie, I believe, and it's like razor really, really thin, and you have
same thing with this bridge. Yeah, okay. It's like razor thin.
So this is really old. This is like ancient Zoroastrianism with Ahura Mazda and other gods and stuff. But the righteous go over the bridge, and if they fall into the lava, the hot stuff, it's like
hell.
Hell. If they fall into it, it feels like warm milk, like you're taking a bath in warm milk. Because you're righteous, you don't get hurt. But if you are unrighteous and you fall in, that it burns away the unrighteousness, and then you enter in. But this idea comes from Persia, and the hell ideas that we get specifically within the biblical text. There's various traditions, they don't all agree, but some of that seems to come from the Greco-Roman and even potentially Persian roots that Jews had picked up while they were in Persia. But definitely by the Hellenistic period, they're starting to write stories that are incorporating this stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And if you're a Muslim, well, when you hear those kinds of familiar details, well, it's previous prophets preaching the actual truth, the kind of survived in some way, shape, or form. But what you get in Islam is the full correct version, if that makes sense.
Pat, thank you for the super chat. No sky daddies or sky fairies today, son. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate the love and support. Thank you for being here. Mark, so
yes.
Do you it sounds like you're a pretty chill guy. Like, I mean, I imagine
I'm very comfortable because I asked all the questions you guys are asking, but I don't think your podcast would be enough to answer all of them.
Well, I mean, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time in the day to answer so many questions.
Free will alone.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts, Mark? You're Muslim and he's ex-Muslim. Aleem's ex-Muslim. What do you think? I'm asking as a non-Muslim. I never was a Muslim. I'm not an ex-Muslim. But what do you think about the dynamic between ex-Muslims and Muslims? Because one of the things I'd like to see is less hatred that can come from both sides, not just one, but both sides. Because there are some who hate Islam, who left it, and then you have some who are Muslims who hate people who left Islam and they wish they were dead. What do you think as a Muslim? Like, how do you, as a human, really, not just a Muslim, but as a human, how do you feel about this issue?
I think legitimately like this. I don't want to make a claim for all the Muslims around the world or whatever, because like everyone decides to apply or show religion in the way they want to show it, but that cannot be the case, right? So as a Muslim, the main guidance is Quran is the first unchanged. We claim to be historically unchanged because of the scriptures we have and everything, right? And in Quran you'll find many places where God it's making super clear that you have free will and he's going to deal with the unbelievers after they die. And in this sense, if God's just deciding that, because God can stop all the non-believers. So let's say I leave Islam tomorrow, he can just, boom, make me vanish, right? The point is, like, I cannot hate on people that leave Islam, apart from wishing more good on them, and hopefully I can clarify some of the misconceptions that I have in case they want to turn back to the only true God. But in the other hand, I'm not going to cry about it, in a sense, why you or anybody else would leave Islam, because in the end of the day, I'm more worried about my future, because that is the thing. If you knew that your future is guaranteed, what is the point of even trying after, right? So this is why Islam says, as Aleem quoted earlier, where you kind of don't know where you're going to go, hell or heaven. God has promised in the Holy Book that every Muslim that believes in the 5 pillars of Islam, on all the prophets and before, is going to go to heaven. Now, specifically, are they 100% safe from hell? No, that depends on, because you cannot preach and not do what you preach. Let's say, if I say Islam says don't lie, but I keep lying to you guys 24/7, am I even, but that means I'll go to heaven. But how can I go to heaven if I keep lying? And going to the point of points of earlier, we need, I think, like where you said, like scriptures, Zorian scriptures mention about the Sirat bridge and everything like this.
Right.
Islam claims that all the previous stories, the world had prophets since Adam and Eve, right? Sent one by one after one another. Humans like to mysticize things, and don't forget, in the religious scriptures, you also got the devil playing around with people's ideologies, just like he played around with Adam and Eve in heaven. Sorry. In this sense, if devil wants to add or remove stuff, whether it's a human being, whether it's himself presenting himself as this solution thing, mysticism, this and that, you see those as people stealing from previous scriptures. Let's say Islam stealing from Persian scriptures. I see it as Islam clarifying what the previous prophets bring to the people, because people change them later on.
May I
Because if
chime
I
in?
want to, yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, this is good. I'm glad you brought this up, because I wouldn't use the word steal. That gives a modern idea.
Import the basics.
Yeah, I definitely think there is a cultural and sometimes genetic connection between cultures, that, stories float around and they learn from other people. I do look at those. I look at genetic ones. I look at cultural ones that are indirect, but yet still genetic in a more distant way. The problem with the Zoroastrian one I would just raise is that this is not a biblical prophet. Ahura Mazda is not a biblical prophet. It is not Adam to Jesus. This is a completely different system of religion. And your point about Satan, I find interesting because there's church fathers who actually identify many of the parallels. Like, I can bring up a ton of them, right? You've probably watched some of my channel before. I show a lot of interesting parallels. Early Christian apologist named Justin Martyr and others as well, Clement, you name it. They said, well, the devils long ago knew the prophets and the prophecies. They knew Christ was coming, so they invented these religions to look like Jesus. And in one of those cases, you have a dying and rising God. Okay. Now, Islam doesn't accept that. They don't think Jesus is a dying, crucified, and then resurrected figure, right?
Yes.
So like, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but I think it's important to mention, if I grant that there really are devils, there really are jinn, there really are demons, there really are a God.
Yes.
How do we know? How do we know that it's not you that's being tricked, or that, you know, you're not believing in the religion that's really secretly the deception? How can you be certain of something like that when you know in your belief God's, you know, there's been other demons, there's been devils, and they're playing a trick? What if, just hypothetically, what if the one you believe is the trick? You know?
Okay. So the point is here, right? We get into philosophy now. So if God exists, the necessary being exists, and we see a beautiful universe, like accurately measured, and came up with a Big Bang, and antimatter and matter was measured in such a precise point that would lead to creation of the earth. Granted, even through evolution, let's forget Adam and Eve, right? If there is a necessary being, I'm writing a thesis letter on that, a philosophical letter as well, but that's I'm gonna send it to you, like, hopefully maybe you publish it. So like, if this being created earth and allowed humans to exist, which come in with intelligence, right? We're the only like creature in our planet that can understand the concept of infinity. You can talk to a donkey for 1,000 years, 2,000 years. He will never grasp a millimeter of what infinity is, right? So since we can comprehend these conceptions, right? And somebody created it, like a God created it, right? Surely he would communicate with us. What's the point?
Right. I guess just so that we try to be on track the best we can, because
if it is
this is
for devil to exist, you need God to exist. Otherwise, no point to have a devil.
Well, this is the reason I mention this, because if you read a lot of these ancient stories, Mark, there's some really clever gods. You might call them devils. They aren't called devils, but one of them, for example, his name was Enki or Ea. Ancient Mesopotamian god, was a trickster.
Never heard of it. No.
He was a trickster. He plays tricks on people. And he also is a very significant deity in the ancient Mesopotamian world. All of the ancient religions have creators. They have gods who create the world. They create nature in their stories. All I'm saying is I can list like dozens of religions side by side, and some are not biblical at all. Some are Egyptian, some are Persian. We talked about Hinduism, you know, all these fun, interesting religions. And then I get Islam and I put it right next to it and I go, man, I see a lot of overlap and parallels, and I want to get the right one. This one's the latest one as far as we have revelation.
Latest update, yes.
Yeah, latest update. And I'm sitting here and I'm being an honest human, just going, man, I want the truth. I want to know what the truth is. Which one is it? How do I know this one isn't the deception? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can I be certain?
Why Islam is not the deception?
Yeah, because you mentioned earlier the
makes
other.
Sense. No, it makes sense because I misunderstood your question, right? Again, why Islam is not the deception, right? First of all, does Islam claim to have a Zeus with 7 other gods, or does it have one? And first, before you decide to whether study Islam or not, you need to figure out how many gods can be there. And to figure that out as a concept, can there be multiple gods? You have to go to philosophy. As I said, science cannot measure God, even if he exists, right? And philosophy rationale thinking, our perception for infinity and possibilities, is the only way whether we can derive whether a God possibly can exist or not. And I think anybody that doesn't do this research, like, I think they got it wrong about God. As what was his name? The Pascal's wager, you know, the Spanish mathematician, right? Where he said that we're taking a big bet. Everybody's taking a big bet. You, me, everybody else, right? And the outcome of the bet is very huge. We're talking about eternity.
That's what the Christians say. That's exactly what the Christians say, man. And I'm like, yeah, huh? Which one? Which one?
The problem is, though, right? If you just don't want to do like no philosophy research, no, you're afraid to ask questions to all the religions, including Islam, like tough questions, right? And you refuse to like just not follow your rationale, your thoughts, even if it challenges God, right? Even if it challenges your religion, it's kind of no point. You're just being a robot. You're following what your parents followed. And I think that was not the point of Abrahamical religions, if you might say. I don't think that was God's point. The God's point was use what intellect you have that I've given you, use the free will, and discover why God answers many philosophical explanation of why universe came to be, why everything is so accurate, rather than other options that you come with, which fundamentally just collapse among themselves. One of them,
so Mark,
for example.
Real quick,
so Mark. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, can I hit these supers real quick here? And
then, go ahead.
And then, because I want you to engage with. I've been rambling here, and I'm just having fun.
Cool.
By the way, what the is free will? Is it really free will? Pat, thank you so much for the super chat. I look, I've heard different explanations of trying to make sense of it. It's like
I gave it earlier, the explanation.
But I'm saying like there's all sorts. Well, there's several. I don't want to derail you and Aleem from what's coming here in terms of your discussion. Pat says, because in Exodus, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, God breaks it. So I imagine this is talking about God actively breaking someone's free will or breaking their will. I'm not sure what that's related to, Pat. Inquisitive mind, good to see the ghost of MythVision. Left Islam because a bacon sandwich saw me, I swear. Okay.
See, Mark, you know how good bacon is too. You remember.
He needs to be off mushrooms. That's why I say to him. If bacon can see him, like, he needs to let go of mushrooms.
Right? Vigi Full, thank you so much. I would believe New Testament is Greco-Roman. Yet Zechariah 12:10, Yahweh claims he will be pierced by Judea. His spirit makes them mourn, opens their heart. Thank you so much for the super chat. I would love to address.
It is Greco-Roman. I'm not gonna lie.
There's a lot of Greco-Roman.
Yeah.
We agree. Mark, we agree. High five.
High five for that, man.
All right, we agree. But it's not
unfortunately.
There is obviously Jewish material. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying people ignore the Greco-Roman, and there's a lot in there. Gaddis again in the house with the super chat. Thank you. I was wondering how much did you guys connected with religion prior to leaving, because it helped with the idea of one day dying, death. Specifically, if you want to answer that, Aleem, and don't forget your conversation. So I don't want to throw you off track.
Oh, well, that was one of the biggest things, because I didn't even worry. So I connected with religion so much on the idea of death that I didn't worry about dying, because I'm going to paradise and I'm going to see all my loved ones again. Right. So I think when you're a true believer, it often gets rid of that fear of death. And I think about my grandfather who passed away a few years ago, and how much comfort he got from knowing that he would see my grandmother again, and so on and so forth. I think that's a huge reason why a lot of people believe.
Yeah, powerful. I agree. I think I was kind of naive. I felt like I was chosen, special. Like I could walk in front of a bus and God would move the bus. You know, like I had a very childlike faith where I was not going to have any problems. And when you leave, a lot of that, comfort does go away.
It does. That's the reality. Yeah.
And there's an interesting video I saw yesterday. I can't pronounce his name very well. Gostovievsky. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name exactly, but really, he brought up that I'd rather want to know the truth. He said, I'd want to know what reality is, even if that meant I'm lonely and it sucks. But then another person said, no, in this very poetic video, said, no, I would prefer the illusion and be happy than to know the truth and be unhappy. And I'm like, I sent that to a few of my close friends, and I'm like, look, I struggle with this sometimes where I'm like, there was something about naive kind of comfort of believing that I don't have, that I used to have when I was a believer in Jesus, or in really the biblical God. Victor Engelman, thank you so much. Pascal's wager fails in higher math. Victor, thank you so much, Victor. Aleem, I interrupted, and I only did that because the super chatters,
of course,
keep the lights on. But if you would give your final thing to Mark, I want to wrap things up here soon if possible.
Okay, I think I have a good way of wrapping it up, even though, Mark, I think there's a lot we can talk about. And also, I just want to say you're welcome to come on to my channel too, if you would like. So if you're not subscribing, please subscribe, and you can reach out to me. My email's in my About page. So I want to talk about this whole, of coming down to there's this one God. So any religion that claims multiple gods, like, the Greeks, throw that out right away, the Norse gods. Let's say we settle on the one God. The thing that I couldn't bridge, the Sirat bridge I could not bridge, was I couldn't see how, looking at all of the logical arguments, and as you can tell, Derek, you can tell too, I'm much more of like a logic reason person when it comes to Islam. I couldn't figure out how we could determine that the Islamic God, so the God who supposedly wrote the Quran, is that deity. I couldn't see how we could determine it to be so. For me, I couldn't just do a checklist. Oh, well, this makes sense. A, B, C, D, E. Because the claim is so big, Mark. Do you know what I mean? The claim is he's all around us. He created everything, but you can't directly experience him. There's all of these other things like jinn and shaitan, and there's this afterlife, and all of these things. Once you check off the list of A, B, C, D, this makes logical sense philosophically. Now I have to believe all this stuff too. I just could not take that step. So that's something I'm happy to talk about you another time as well.
No, 100%. And I think to top it up, like to your point, right? That's why it comes down what we call belief.
Faith, right?
Faith, right? Like, but that doesn't mean, like, for example, like in our holy book, the first verse that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was read. And he obviously, as everybody knows, he claims to not know how to read. So why is the angel telling him to read? But he's not talking to Prophet, the angel. It was talking to you and me. Seek knowledge. And a lot of the problem is, like, you can just say, like, yeah, but I'm just going to believe, so this bus will not hit me because my belief is so strong. But if your belief has gaps and holes on it, as soon as it starts raining, you're going to get very wet. So the point is, you have to do the research. You have to do the philosophical research, science research. That's why, like, the golden era of Arabia exists, because people were not scared to ask questions, because they were not scared that, oh, the result's going to lead away from my religion, And I think it comes down to some traumas. No offense to any of you, like, this is my personal opinion. Traumas that comes down from religions being inflicted upon you outside of you. And as soon as you maybe asked the question, like, maybe your cousin was like, what are you talking about? This is kufr. This is like, you're being heretic now. Why are you even asking questions about God? You can't ask questions about God when God himself said, read. To you, me, and everybody else, read, seek knowledge. Because God is not there for you to just believe spiritually. He's going to move rocks for you. It is our duty. That's the point of life. According to Islamic theology, that's the reason we're here, to seek knowledge and come into a conclusion. Now, whether that conclusion is going to be accurate or not, I guess everybody will find out after we die. but you cannot arrive in a conclusion if you do a very superficial knowledge seeking, and you stop seeking knowledge because mushrooms are very good until you start seeing bacon watching you back, you know.
Mark, hey man, thanks for coming on and being so kind.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me.
It was a pleasure, Mark.
Yeah, come back
Pleasure
sometime.
again.
Absolutely.
Derek, send me his YouTube channel as well, so I can like contact him. If
I
I
got
think you have the link in the video description.
I do.
Okay, perfect.
I do.
Because I'm
but
on
I'll-
StreamYard, so like I cannot get it here.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat too, so you can
Let me
also
screenshot.
go.
Yeah, I got it. Secular Spirit, right?
Yes, Secular
Yeah, that's me.
Spirit
I got
is
it.
the
I got
YouTube
it.
channel. So make sure you go check that out. And thank you so much for calling in,
100%.
Mark.
Thank
All
you,
right, my
guys. It
brother.
was a pleasure.
Stay safe. Yes, sir.
Take care.
Bye. All right. Hey, got another super chat we got to get. Christopher, I see you backstage, but we're wrapping things up. My time has run out, my friend. Please come back next time. We'll try to do this again sooner than later, Aleem.
Yeah. I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Christopher, I apologize, my friend. I hope to have you come back again for our next stream. All right. Yeah, so we got to wrap things up here. I'm at the end of my time today. I am a 1983. Thank you for the super chat and being a member. In ancient times, kings had priests who interpreted their dreams, which were written down. Many believe that these are in the Bible, but for some reason now one has to do with Israel. I don't know what the last part.
I kind of got lost on that last part too. Yeah.
The last part, I think, is the important point they're trying to get at. And I'm not sure I understand this completely apart from the fact that many ancient kings, many ancient people that were important had dreams, and they had interpreters of dreams in their courts. And you do find
I wish
that
I had that job.
I know, right? Listen, your dream, it's all good news. You know, I would just try to be the
just keep me in power and you're gonna get the best. Yeah, but then the problem is if you were wrong too many times, then
exactly.
There you go.
That's the problem right there. Is that there was which prophet was it? My goodness, I can't remember which prophet was, but he always had negative omens. Like it was always bad. And the king's like, don't even ask him, ask everyone else. And then finally he's like, ask him. And then when he asks, he gives there's a lying spirit. This is why I brought this up to our friend Mark. We didn't get into the weeds of this. This could have gotten much more in depth because God sends lying spirits in the Bible. I imagine maybe the Quran has something to do with God, maybe deceptions that are sent, by God. Not that the devil has power and makes deceptions too. That might be true for the viewer or for the caller, but I'm talking about God intentionally deceives. Okay. Now, when that happens, when God is willing to send a lying spirit, how do you know that spirit isn't the spirit of the text you're reading, or the angel that you think you're hearing from in a cave, or the angel that Paul claims he's having revelation from, called Jesus? Okay. These are real questions that I think you and I both have been willing to ask. But again, to address the super chat, thank you. I'm sorry I don't quite understand the last part. Let me just see if you elaborated a little. You said, just to make sure I didn't miss something you might have been saying, they did a lot of mushrooms when they needed.
Did not expect mushrooms to be mentioned this much in this live stream. Oh,
no,
very interesting.
I think under the right circumstance, people can have profound life-changing experiences with the right environment and I would say a safe environment, because I've had bad experiences on them too. And they can be pretty rough.
Yeah, I second that. Definitely in the same boat there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple. I think I've done it like 5 times, pretty, not like minor. I'm talking like handful of golden caps and went, to the moon for a little while. And a couple of those moon visits was like literally, walking that bridge. You know what I'm saying? Like
walking that bridge, that razor thin bridge. Yeah.
That bridge was something else, bro. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, IMA, love you. Thank you so much for the super chat. I don't quite get the last part, other than maybe there were plenty of dreams, and that goes for people in Israel as well, I suspect. Maybe some of the stories they inherited come from some of the bigger kingdoms. I don't know. That might be what they're talking about. Pat 907, thanks for the super chat. My point is, God continuously breaks free will at every turn throughout the book. My question is free will really free will if it gets broken all the time? That's a good point.
Yeah, that's well said. There's something that Matt Dillahunty says often on his various channels of, where's my Damascus Road experience that Paul had? Because like, why intervene with this person or that person, but not with, you and me?
Yeah, that's a good point. And Pat, that's the problem when you read the book, when you actually study the text, you do see God do these things in the Bible, and you have to ask yourself, is he really that concerned with free will when he coercively does so much so often and not under people's volition, hardening their hearts intentionally, doing all sorts of things that would show he doesn't? There's no like free will barrier. That's a modern philosophical way to deal with the problem of evil, and they clearly didn't have that problem back then. God just did what he wanted, even the horrific things, So I agree. Well said. And then PLWK, thank you so much for the super chat. What's the Achilles heel of Islam? Keep up the good work. What do you think the Achilles heel is, Aleem?
In a way, I think I'm gonna echo what Mark said earlier, which was, do your homework, research, learn more about it, and it really just buries itself the more you learn about it. But the key thing is without assuming belief. But like, I think for a lot of people, especially once you get to a certain age, like you're an adult, where it really falls apart is when you look at what Islam teaches on, homosexuality, on gender equality. That's the most tenuous ground it has. And especially when you look into the life of the Prophet Muhammad, which is, venerated as this is the ideal prototypical Muslim that we should all follow. But then when you actually read the Islamic tradition, so this is what Muslims themselves believe and teach is the truth about Muhammad's life, it's really hard to keep believing that he's this ideal person and that Islam is true.
Interesting. So just
do your homework.
Magnifying glass and really reading the sources and thinking through what they are saying makes it problematic for you. Interesting. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because this is your area much more than it is mine. I've done some studying, obviously, of Islam. I don't want to pretend I don't have anything figured out, but there's much more for me versus someone like you who's born and raised in it. Do you find the current debate that is against polemicist and apologist in Islam and Christianity, do you find the argument for the Islamic dilemma to make sense? Suppose Christianity is at least, credited in some way by Islam. Doesn't that self-defeat a lot of Islam in some way? And how would you address that as someone looking at the debate that goes on between the Muslims and the Christian apologists when they use the Islamic dilemma?
Like, maybe this is kind of like a side tangent response. What I find so interesting about the debates between the Muslims and Christians is they're so good, they're so astute at pointing out the logical flaws, the inconsistencies, the hypocrisies of the other religion, and yet they somehow don't see it in their own religion.
Right.
In a way, it's like entertaining, but it's also very frustrating when I think about a lot of the people who suffer because of those religious teachings, where if they just turn that really skeptical lens that they have on the other religion on themselves and their own faith, they would see that it's very similar. I don't know. Does that kind of answer your question?
No, yeah. I mean, I've called out David Wood for this in the past, and he was doing some slam on Muslims and did something about Islam where he talked about, it's a fable, it's fiction, in the Quran, and I'm like, yeah.
Old irony.
In your New Testament. And so I love to do that kind of stuff. But I guess to be more specific is, do you find the argument, or have you heard, maybe you haven't really wrapped your mind around what the Islamic dilemma is from them, but do you find that argument to be persuasive to some degree? Because if the Quran is saying the Injil the gospel, meaning the New Testament texts, are good. And then we go there and it's saying stuff like Jesus was crucified. And I feel like there's some kind of disconnect going on, because I can't imagine that Muslims accept the New Testament hasn't been corrupted. So do you think that the definition of Injil that is going on in the Quran is different from the New Testament Gospels that Christians are portraying? I mean, it seems like there's something going on that Christians are saying, look, your religion is approving ours, but ours contradicts yours. So how can yours be true? That's ultimately what they're saying in like a sentence.
I think that's like an easily answered question, like from the perspective of a Muslim believer, because the easiest way to look at it is, yes, the New Testament was changed, it was altered by human hands, and what you're getting in the Quran is the correct record. You're getting, of course, there's going to be overlap in the details because it's the same God, the same prophet, like the prophets working towards the same goal of sharing the truth, revealing the truth. But with Islam, you get everything rectified, everything corrected. And so any contradictions or hypocrisies or inconsistencies, well, that's from the Christians, not from the Quran. So for a Muslim, I mean, you can point out inconsistencies and hypocrisies in the Quran, which they'll just, they'll rationalize those away. Oh, that's your faulty interpretation, which I'm sure you've noticed Christian apologists do as well. But for a Muslim looking at that from the perspective of the New Testament and how they're connected, it's an easy thing to rationalize. Not saying I agree, just playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. You have a better grasp of Islam and what would be the Achilles heel, but just to finally answer that question from my end, I think people are sleeping on mythology or legend, fable, folklore, fiction. I really think people over time, it's a hard thing to get people to understand, because if I try to tell you, hey, Genesis is mythology, you go, no, it's true. And then I try to explain to you how there's older stories that it's clearly borrowing from, but it's also arguing against, that are clearly polytheistic. It inherits their structure. In order for yours to even exist, theirs exists. The only clever move that seems to be happening specifically, well, the Bible kind of does this by saying Abraham's from Ur of Chaldees, but the Quran tries to do, or at least Islam, I don't know if the Quran itself tries to do this, but if Muslim tradition does, to say, hey, listen, they were Muslims, Adam was a Muslim, like they all believed like Prophet Muhammad, and they were all in the same belief system and thought exactly the same way. And I see mythology or hagiography, take for example, with the sleepers in the cave story. That's clearly Christian legend that predates the Quran. And I see the Quran doing something, rewriting a story within their context. And it seems even the Quran hints at something that I do think reflects the Hadith tradition, with the three questions that the Jews ask. I think it's Mecca, the Meccans. It might have been the Medinans, but I think the Meccans asked the Jews, hey, he says he's a prophet, what should we say? And the Jews come to him with three questions. Tell us about, what is the soul? Tell us those interesting questions. And in the Quran, when he says, next time, say, Allah will tell me when, not next day, which in the Hadith tradition, he says, hey, I'll tell you tomorrow. It's not till like 15, 14 days later, something like that, till he gets the answer. And when he comes back, his answer matches very interesting other stuff like Dul Qarnayn, which is clearly Alexander the Great. In that we had legends of this guy who, by the way, was a monotheist in those legends. He was not a pagan with horns representing a deity from Amun in Egypt like he was earlier. The Christians and Jews sanitized Alexander the Great, made him a monotheist. When you track that shit, for me, that's the Achilles heel. It's the fingerprint of humanity. It tells me these are just stories that are regurgitated and recycled. And that's why I love the question of our caller, Mark, was like, those are all demons and devils. And they're like, really? Yeah. So how do you know yours isn't?
How do you know exactly?
Yeah, it's a fun one. Anyway, I rambled on a bit too long there. Thank you so
No,
much.
it's I love how much you love looking into the lore and like the history, the mythology of this stuff, because I find it fascinating as well. There's just one thing I wanted to mention to you. I'm
Please.
not sure if you came across it. So I'm sure you've heard of Riza Aslan, like
Yes.
the historian who's written about Islam and Christianity. One thing, I'm not the biggest fan of some things he said over the years, just to kind of make a long story short there. But one thing that was really interesting in one of his books that I read was how the perception of truth, or factual authenticity, was different in the past. And by that he meant, when someone, like, let's say the story of Adam and Eve, the people in the past, like people who were raised on these kinds of stories, they didn't look at the truth of a story like that the same way we would look at truth today.
Mhm.
What mattered more was that the essence being expressed by that story had a universal, elemental truth in it. So they weren't concerned, well, was there actually an Adam 3,000-4,000 years ago? The mind didn't work that way when it came to religion and mythology. It was more about, well, what can we take from this? Well, we are fallen. We have to, atone. We have to, make the world a better place so we can return to this idyllic state. That's what mattered.
So my struggle with this is that humans at some fundamental level believe these things in some way. Maybe not post-rationalist, literalist in the same way we might, but they have to believe them to some degree. Let me give you an analogy using Islam.
Sure.
Okay. If I showed you, if I asked a Muslim today, and you can answer, pretend you're the hypothetical Muslim you were, and I said, hey, Aleem, did the Quran get dictated to the Prophet from Allah? What would you say to me?
Of course it did. Yeah.
Every
directly to him.
All of it, every bit of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question would be like, and obviously you don't believe it anymore, but I would say, why would you have a story of sleepers in a cave lifting from an hagiography that we have from 200 to 300 years prior to the Quran, that Christians already had a legend floating around about a resurrection story? It's an end time story where there was persecution under one of these, I can't remember if it was Diocletian or somebody. One of the emperors was persecuting Christians. They fled into a cave, and rocks fell down, and they went to sleep. And the emperor was like, okay, they're done. They're sealed. They die, right? Sleep represents death in this story. Hundreds of years go by. They wake up, and they have coins that they go buy food in the city. When they do, the people of the city go, are you treasure hunters? Where did you get that coin of that emperor? That's like ancient. And they realize then, oh my gosh, we've been asleep for 200 and something years. They go back, and the story has it that there was also a guardian, depending on which version you read, because there's several variants of it. I love learning this. But then you go, why would then the Quran have Muhammad, this dictated to Muhammad in a cave? You're almost forced to think that he really did get this through dictation by God. But then you have the story of Dhul-Qarnayn. You have the story of the sleepers in the cave. You have Qadir in Moses. You have the Green Man, all of these interesting, strange legends that I can show you predate and are contemporaneous in Jewish lore. And you're telling me that a guy had to go in a cave and got this through revelation, through Gabriel, which was dictated by Allah. I find the middleman unnecessary anymore, because I now know humans tell these stories, and you have to come up with an apologetic to say that he couldn't have known it because he can't read. But I always jokingly say, then he must have been deaf and blind too, because people talk, and you're going to tell me he didn't hear these stories? So like, clearly he wasn't deaf and blind. I even wonder, was he really illiterate? He might have been, he might not have been.
We'll never really know. We'll never know. That's the honest answer.
Yeah. And I guess that just painting that one analogy, I've rambled on about it, but it's like so obviously fictive. Many Christians thought about their own legend when that didn't happen. Some did believe it, and they set up shrines and everything to the saints that are listed there. But when you read the Quran, he says, whether there was 3, whether there was 5, or whether there was 7, only Allah knows. Allah's telling you the story. Why wouldn't Allah tell you how many? Go read it. It's in Surah 18, Surah Al-Kahf. And when you read it, you go 3, 5, and 7. Why do those numbers appear? the earlier legends from the Christians had different amount of characters in the cave. So he's hearing variations. He's hearing floating stories, probably from Syriac Christians. And I think that's an Achilles heel. Do you understand why I think that's an Achilles heel?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I like to do. I like that. That's my style, at least, you know?
Well, but maybe there was a reason God did that.
Yeah.
You got me in a corner here. What can I say?
No, I love it. I love it because listen, I do really want to do these streams to show kindness more than hate, because my God, there's enough of it going on right now. And trust me, we don't have to agree. We can debate, but I'm trying to be that bridge, not the one that you fall into hell over. Okay. The bridge that's broad and helps people to find a path to happiness, even if that means softening their fundamentalism with their own religion, a less harmful form of it.
Yeah, we're on the same page. That's the goal of my channel too, because again, as I was saying in the very beginning, I just want people to ask themselves questions maybe they've never thought of before. And if I've done that with one person watching this right now, then I feel like I've done my job.
Absolutely. You've done your job. I promise you, people will be, even if they're not Muslim, will find, what you said very useful.
I hope so. I hope so.
Absolutely. Steve Sinead, forgive me, off topic, but I heard the kafia was originally from Iraq before Arafat began wearing it in the late 1960s. Is that accurate from your understanding? I don't know.
I have to be honest. That's a great question to ask my parents. I personally have to confess, I don't know.
I'll tell you, this is obviously not that. I do have the kafia I bought a full, absolute, like the whole wardrobe with everything, the covering, the whole nine, when I was actually on a tour in Israel from a Muslim who was, selling it on the streets. And I said, hook me up, man. I want to get the whole outfit. I don't know why I did at the time, but I also got my wife one. She looks like a desert princess. Like we're talking about like dangling, like jewel. It looks really, really beautiful on her. I don't know the answer to that. This came from Afghanistan when I was there in 2010, and I was doing contract work for a few months, and then I came back. But I just felt like, it was relevant to talking about Islam. I was like, this article just reminds me.
It looks good too.
Thank you. Mindwise in the house with the 616. I've seen Shabir Ali and Yasser Qadi accept the science of evolution, but they struggle with Adam, of course. Is evolution a topic for Muslims? Rock hard for Doug.
That's a really good question. I think this is really generalizing, but I think there's two major schools, especially amongst Muslims that live in the Western world. And I would say there's the ones who just reject evolution as, completely false. There's no way, it doesn't make sense. You've probably heard certain things from Christians, like if we evolved from apes, why are there still apes? You'll hear things like that. So it's just like a complete rejection. But then there's the ones who I would say they're kind of like compatibilists, where they do think evolution is real. They believe in evolution, but they think it's divinely guided by God, like it's through God's hands. But then Adam and Eve is a bit of a pickle there, because as you can, like, if you think about how did humanity spread, it kind of leads you to a little bit of a problem, right?
Yeah. I love, like, it's not just Muslim apologists, and Yasser Qadi, from what I understand, is more on the academic side of the apologetic side.
But I'd say that's accurate. Yeah.
But he's still apologist. Yeah. And it's William Lane Craig struggles with it. Like many Christian apologists struggle with the whole Adam and Eve thing. But I will say this, I did watch a video when I was doing my video preparing for my dual carnine topic, because it goes deeper than I went. And I went like 2.5 hour video, 2 hour video. I mean, it was very long. I started a series called The Human Origins of the Quran. And the whole point was exactly what I kind of elaborated on earlier, but in much greater depth and a lot of sources. That story of Dul-Qarnayn, which goes back to Alexander the Great, goes back to Gilgamesh. It is the oldest hero story we have in epic form, but recycled all the way down into a Christianized and then, of course, Islamic form. But that it was Shabir Ali who actually argued that it was a legend in the Quran. Like it's a story meant to teach, not literal, but like meant to be symbolic or something like that. And I find that interesting that he went that route. He was willing to say that in the Quran. I'm like,
Yeah, it's dangerous territory, because then what other stories are just supposed to be legends and what stories actually happened, who decides, and you'll see all sorts of disagreements on all sorts of those things, because what we're seeing is 21st century minds are trying to somehow make an ancient religion compatible with modern understanding, modern science, and it's a bit of a bumpy ride, let's just say that.
it is. It's interesting you said that, because the series I had laid out, the final episode I wanted to do, I'm teasing everybody, is to show why the angel in the cave episode, meaning the angel giving the dictation to Muhammad, also may actually be legend and may not actually be a historical event at all to begin with.
Mushrooms?
I don't even necessarily have to go that. I'm saying literary, because when you go back, I can show you other stories that that share the same idea in a cave. And guess what? When the presence of this entity angel appears, they want to end their life. They're terrified. They don't want to keep living because it's that scary. This is in older legends as well. So I'm thinking to myself, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck and it flies like a duck, there's a chance it's likely a duck. I can't prove that he wasn't in a cave and didn't have some kind of revelation or whatever, but I'd be like, whatever version we're told might be polished of something that maybe he was in a cave and meditating, but they really made it into a legend, if that makes sense. So that was going to be my final episode.
Very interesting. I would definitely watch that.
Heck yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to subscribe to Secular Spirit, the 220 people watching in all different areas right now. Be sure to check him out. I really, really do appreciate his kindness and coming on here to take calls. I really want to do this again, if you're down. And
let's do it.
Yeah, we could even do one where you, me, and Aladdin are on a call, or do a call-in.
Yeah, that would be great. And one thing, if I can just mention quickly, Derek, if anyone wants to hear like the longer version of my story of like leaving Islam, I do have a video somewhere there. I didn't see it, but it's somewhere there where I share like a 2.5 hour version of the story. So you'll hear all the details I shared today and more.
Where's that at? Let's find it.
There it is.
Which one?
This is why I left Islam.
This one?
Yeah.
This is why. Okay, let me share. Wow, 31,000 views. Look at
From
you.
my shorter hair days.
Heck yeah. Let me put that in the chat now for everybody. So I just commented it down below. It's only appearing on the Facebook and the YouTube side. On the Twitter side, I don't think it appears, but just go check out on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, Secular Spirit, and you will find it under videos. And you scroll down and go listen to his full story. Maybe we have you back to dive deeper into your full story, because you teased me enough to be really get into the weeds of what happened.
Oh, there's more. Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Any final words from you?
Again. No, I just kind of want to actually repeat what the final caller, Mark, said. Whether you're a Muslim or a former Muslim, I encourage you to just do your research, do your own homework. Don't just take what I'm saying or anyone is saying online as gospel, as it were. Do your own research. And I think the key is go into it open-minded and look at your own assumptions and see where that journey takes you. And I promise you, even if it takes you away from faith, there's still a good life to be enjoyed, to be lived. Like, I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything because I'm no longer Muslim. Because I don't believe that I'm going to continue existing after I die. I found meaning in life in other ways. So you can too.
Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, like this show, share it with your friends if you can. Some of you may not be able to do that. Comment down below your thoughts, and I hope one day you will be able to. I love a world where we can allow ourselves the freedom and to enjoy those things. Of course, subscribe if you haven't, and hit the bell. Because if you don't hit the bell, you won't get notified. I really, really hope you'll hit the bell, because a lot of the subscribers who watch many YouTube channels don't get the notification. They don't get notified because you don't hit the bell. And so, we got one more last second here. Mindwise, thank you so much. Perhaps too late, but talking about DQ. DQ.
I think the Vulkarnain.
Okay, Dhul-Qarnayn, yeah. Any comparison with the Yajuj, Majuj from biblical, historical, Islamic perspective? Saw Magog on a useful chart. Yes, Magog is absolutely the same lineage of what the Islamic setting is. So Magog, Gog and Magog, which that itself is a whole nother thing I unravel in my video. But yes, there is comparison from the biblical, but even into like Josephus talks about it, that Alexander the Great went and built these iron gates in the mountains, right there where the Caucasus Mountains meet where the Caspian Sea and stuff is. He built these walls that will never go down until the apocalypse. And if you go look today, there's no walls there, just so you know. Nothing blocking the people who are really immoral and cannibalistic and all the horrific ideas. They're like inhuman on the other side. There's nothing blocking them. But maybe I don't know if there ever was, but this idea of apocalypticism is tied in with that.
Yeah, and I had nightmares about them as a kid when I was like a believing Muslim. Oh yeah, we can talk about all that next time. Yeah.
Okay. Mind-wise, let me shamelessly plug my my video then, because some of you might be like, "Whoa, what is this series?" Human Origins of the Quran, MythVision. I've only done 2 or 3 now. Human Origins of the Quran, MythVision. Let's see. What do we have here? Yeah, I've got episode, The Quran is Man-Made. That was a short little like, hey, I'm about to start this series. Then I did I've done a couple different videos here, man. Hold on.
I've got just adding them to my queue.
Yeah, this is the latest, greatest that I did, which is the one on Dhul-Qarnayn. And it goes through, all sorts of detail that you can watch and enjoy watching. It's quality stuff. So let me put that in the chat. If you want to go watch that after, feel free. But I say at the very beginning, it's a little get a little antsy here. Let me show you what I say, how I say it. Grab your attention. I say this. People. Hold on. What I'm about to show you could get me killed in 11 countries. In the holiest way to open, right? Just this kill in 11 countries. So watch it while you can. There it is. Anyway, thank you, Aleem, for your time, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for the last super chat. Yeah. Anyway, man, let's have a good one.
All right. Take care and hope to be back on the channel soon.
Absolutely. Never forget, ladies and gentlemen, we are MythVision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.